Chapter 385. Xiang Xiping's expression darkened. She no longer had any intention of buying the jade pendant. She tried to break free from Madame Luo and Madame Song. Madame Luo and Madame Song's hands were clinging tightly to her arm. "What are you doing?" Not only was Xiang Xiping's expression dark, but her voice was also cold. She looked at Su Peijian, feeling that this girl was too annoying. "Ask them to move. Auntie, look, the boss is here. Don't you want it? Why don't you buy it?" Su Peijian's mocking tone made people feel uncomfortable. Xiang Xiping didn't want to buy it in the first place. This made her even angrier. "Su Peijian, don't be like this. Auntie, look at you. How am I being like this? Didn't I say I would give it to you? Don't rush. I don't need you to give it to me." Xiang Xiping looked at Su Peijian. It had nothing to do with her whether she was ugly or not. However, Su Qinghui had been such a gentleman when he was young, and now he had a daughter like this. Xiang Xiping was truly emotional. Apart from feeling emotional, she also wanted to educate Su Peijian. "Miss Su, as someone who has lived a few more years than you, I still want to give you some advice. You can't just look at the surface. Some people, some things. You don't understand, so don't say anything." Su Peijian didn't expect that one day she would be taught a lesson by a mistress like Xiang Xiping. "What did you say?" Xiang Xiping looked at Madame Luo and Madame Song coldly. She hadn't taken care of herself in the past few years, so she looked older than them. However, Madame Luo and Madame Song couldn't help but let go of her. Xiang Xiping looked at the jade pendant on the counter. "Boss, your staff just said that this jade pendant was discounted for 440,000 yuan. I don't like this number. I bought this jade Buddha as a gift. Just tell me if you can sell it for 390,000 yuan. If you can, I'll swipe my card now." The boss was stunned and looked at Xiang Xiping. This jade pendant was indeed of good quality. However, he didn't expect Xiang Xiping to be so straightforward. "You can't sell it? Never mind then." Xiang Xiping liked the jade Buddha very much, but it wasn't as if he couldn't get it. In fact, the price of 390,000 could still buy some good things. "Excuse me. Yes, I can. It can be sold." After saying that, the boss wiped the non-existent sweat on his forehead. "You are Miss Su's friend. Of course I can sell it at this price." Xiang Xiping was about to pay by card, but she paused for a moment because of the owner's words. "Sell it if you can. If you can't sell it, then don't. I don't need to give face to anyone." It was not right for the boss to say yes or no. Su Peijian and the other two stood there without moving. They didn't speak at this time. They didn't plan to speak for the time being. "Looks like I can't. Since this was the case. If that's the case, I won't be able to do business." Xiang Xiping's expression was indifferent. She had no intention of staying. He turned around and walked out. Madame Luo and Madame Luo glanced at Su Peijian, obviously waiting for her reaction. Su Peijian looked at Xiang Xiping's back and laughed coldly. "If you can't afford it, just say it. Why do you have to say that you don't want to give me face?" She turned to look at the boss of Bo Guzhai. "Boss, you don't have to give me face. Just tell this auntie directly. Are you able to sell it or not? Miss Su, look at what you're saying." The boss finally saw through it. Su Peijian didn't get along with that woman just now. He had been in this business for a long time. His eyes were very sharp. That woman just now, he was afraid that she could really afford it. But he didn't want to offend Su Peijian. He thought about it. He came out from behind the counter and walked in front of Xiang Xiping. "Madam, if you really want it, don't care whose face it is. What do you think? Just 390,000. If you want it, I'll have someone wrap it up for you." Xiang Xiping wanted to leave at first, but seeing the boss's attitude, she wasn't an unreasonable person. "Boss, have you thought it through? This isn't a matter of giving face or not. Are you sure you can sell it?" Yes. Of course. It would be a fool not to do a business worth hundreds of thousands." The boss waved his hand and signaled for the clerk to wrap up the jade Buddha. "Look, are you going to swipe it or transfer it? I'm old. I don't know how to use those transfer tools. Just swipe it." After saying this, Xiang Xiping followed the clerk to swipe her card. At this point, both Su Peijian and Madame Luo could see it. So Xiang Xiping was really rich? Madame Luo and Madame Song were fine. This was someone else's family business, and they couldn't interfere. But Su Peijian's expression didn't look too good. She remembered that she had heard Li Qinxue mention it once. Su Qingsong's mother was just an ordinary person. So what did it mean for her to buy such an expensive jade pendant with her status? Su Peijian suddenly felt gloomy. She felt that Su Qinghui might have given Xiang Kaiping money, without her knowing. It meant that he didn't feel bad spending other people's money. Otherwise, how could he be so generous? Xiang Kaiping didn't know what Su Peijian was thinking. After swiping her card, she took the jade pendant from the clerk's hand. The boss finally realized what had happened. He had heard about what had happened from the clerk in the shop. He glanced at the clerk again. The clerk's face was pale, and it was obvious that she regretted her poor judgment. After all, now that the boss was here, the commission from buying the jade pendant had nothing to do with her. The boss glared at the clerk. He suddenly felt that this clerk of Bo Guzhai needed more training. Seeing that Xiang Kaiping was about to leave with the jade pendant, he signaled for the clerk to take out a bracelet that was priced at about 60,000. Madam, look, our clerk's attitude was not very good just now. He neglected you. The quality of this jade pendant is not bad. We'll give it to you as a gift. Please accept it. Next time you want something, come to Bo Guzhai again. Xiang Kaiping glanced at the box in the boss's hand. Compared to Su Peijian, the boss was much more observant. Thank you. She accepted the jade pendant from the clerk's hand graciously. This way she had gotten a bargain. Next time I like something, I'll come again. After saying this, Xiang Kaiping turned around and walked out. If Su Peijian had only been guessing whether Su Chenghui had given money to Xiang Kaiping, now the boss's actions confirmed her suspicions. As soon as the woman swiped her card, the boss gave her a bracelet. What did it mean? It meant that the woman had swiped a card from someone the boss knew. She was overthinking, and was certain that there was something going on between Xiang Kaiping and Su Qinghui. Chapter 386. However, she still cared about her reputation. She couldn't start a fight with Xiang Kaiping here. The only thing he could do now was to slowly think of a way to teach this woman a lesson. Su Peijian was still thinking about how to teach that woman a lesson. Madame Luo, who had been watching the show from the side, suddenly let out a cry of surprise. What's wrong? Auntie, the necklace I was wearing just now is gone. As Madame Luo spoke, Xiang Kaiping had already walked to the door. Xiang Kaiping heard her scream, but she didn't stop. Wasn't your necklace here just now? Mrs. Song quickly said. I saw it just now. Yes. Where's my necklace? Madame Luo's face was full of anxiety. She lowered her head and looked around, but she couldn't find it. Look again. Wasn't this necklace given to you by your old Luo? How about millions? That's right. Madame Luo panicked. She searched her body a few times and even her pockets, but there was nothing. She panicked and said without thinking, Did you see me wearing it just now? Did he enter the store? I didn't even notice. Could it have fallen in the car? Su Peijian looked at the anxious look on Madame Luo's face. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Xiang Kaiping had already walked out of Bo Guzhai. She suddenly used an extremely soft voice and spoke carelessly. Auntie, you were standing with that lady just now. Did you accidentally fall on her? Su Peijian said that she accidentally dropped it there. But the hidden meaning in her words was that Xiang Kaiping had taken it. The boss of Bo Guzhai watched the sudden turn of events without saying a word. The grudges between these people were not something a jade shop owner, like him, could interfere with. Madame Song seemed to have been reminded of something. Ah, that's right. She was standing so close just now. Who knows if she accidentally dropped it into her bag. Xiang Kaiping was carrying a huge bag. The label of a well-known wool brand was very eye-catching. Su Peijian didn't say anything else after that. Madame Luo and Madame Song went out together, blocking Xiang Kaiping's way. Xiang Kaiping's mood had been affected by the appearance of Su Peijian and the others. But now, he had bought the jade pendant that he wanted to give to his daughter. She was in a good mood. There was a subway station nearby, but she wanted to take a taxi back. Anyway, it's not far. However, before she could reach the taxi, her path was blocked by someone. Let me have a look at your bag. Madame Luo spoke rather rudely. Xiang Kaiping frowned, clutched the two bags in her hands tightly, and took a step back. What do you mean? What do you mean? Madame Luo's necklace was her favorite necklace. Her husband had given it to her on her birthday. Now that she saw Xiang Kaiping carrying the bag, she couldn't help but wonder if she had dropped it. I lost my necklace. I suspect it fell into your bag. Bring it over and let me check it. Just now, Madame Luo and Madame Song had each grabbed her hand and refused to let her go. Xiang Kaiping was already quite unhappy. That would be even more outrageous for these two. Was he implying that she had taken something? Xiang Kaiping's face darkened. She looked very gloomy. Get out of my way. I won't have what you want in this bag. If you don't let me see it, then you have a guilty conscience. Seeing her like this, Madame Luo felt that she was even more suspicious. Don't think that you are rich just because you bought a jade pendant and spent hundreds of thousands. Let me tell you, my necklace is worth millions. If you are smart, hurry up and take it out. Otherwise, I will call the police. Call the police. Xiang Kaiping wanted to laugh. If you want to call the police, go ahead. I said it. I didn't take it. What a rude attitude. Madame Luo didn't want to be polite. She and Li Qinxue had a good personal relationship. Since this woman was the mistress from back then, she would teach her a lesson and help Li Qinxue vent her anger. Do you think you didn't take it just because you said you didn't? Bring me the bag, I want to check it. Sorry, you don't have the right. Xiang Kaiping had been doing business for a few years. What kind of people hadn't she seen? She naturally understood a person like Madame Luo. She bullied the weak and feared the strong. To put it bluntly, she was just a fox pretending to be a tiger. I don't have the right? Madame Luo didn't even care that she was on the road. I lost my necklace. I suspect that it fell in your hands. If you don't let me see it, you must be up to no good. Madame Luo was too sharp and aggressive. Xiang Kaiping's expression was calm and unhurried. Madame Song glanced at her from the side and took a step forward. Madam, since you really didn't take the necklace, why don't you let us check it? We're just taking a look. Nothing will happen. Isn't it more suspicious for you to hide it from us like this? Xiang Kaiping glanced at Madame Song coldly. She had no doubt that these two women were deliberately making things difficult for her. She looked at Su Peijian, who had been watching from the side without saying a word. Speaking of which, Miss Su must have been instigating this. She really didn't like this girl. She was sharp, petty, and not magnanimous. More importantly, she had the heart but not the guts. She obviously didn't get along with her, but she didn't come forward herself. Instead, she pushed the other two elders who could almost be her mother. Li Qinxue was such a capable person. How could she raise such a daughter? Thinking about it, she found it really interesting. I will say it again, I didn't take it. My bag is fine too. My bag is fine too. I don't think I will have what you want. Please move aside. She had put the jade pendant and the jade bracelet into her bag carefully. One of the two bags was for knitting a scarf for Su Qingsang, and the other was for Hu Jinyao. The knitting was secondary. She didn't want these people to touch her things. Madame Luo didn't expect Xiang Kaiping to be so rude. She was annoyed. I think it fell in your bag. Give it to me. Xiang Kaiping didn't expect that Madame Luo would dare to hit her. Instinctively, she tried to protect her bag and put it behind her. Unexpectedly, Madame Song saw it and came forward to help. Xiang Kaiping panicked and dodged to the side. She had suffered a lot when she was young, so she was naturally stronger than Madame Luo and Madame Song. However, the two of them were standing on the side of the road. She looked at Madame Luo's outstretched hand and dodged to the middle of the road without thinking. It was not rush hour, but there were still many cars on the road. Behind them, a car happened to be driving in their direction. Chapter 387. Even Su Peijian was stunned by the sudden turn of events. However, the women didn't react at all. They just stared at Xiang Kaiping blankly, even forgetting to reach out to help her. Under the shocked gazes of the three of them, Xiang Kaiping's body was sent flying by the car. The scene seemed to freeze at that moment. Everything seemed to be in slow motion. Su Peijian watched the woman's body fly. Then she fell. The moment Xiang Kaiping fell, she was still thinking about the jade pendant she had bought for her daughter. She held the bag in her hands tightly. The bag flew out, and her body hit a telephone pole by the side of the road. Then she fell. With a screech, Xiang Saiping's body rolled on the ground, then came to a complete stop. The driver got out of the car. Su Peijian and the others seemed to have finally come to their senses and went forward together. Su Peijian looked at Xiang Kaiping lying in a pool of blood. There was only one thought in her mind. She couldn't be dead, could she? When Hua Jingyao received the news and rushed to the hospital, Xiang Kaiping was already in the operating room. In the corridor, other than Madame Luo and Madame Song, Su Peijian was also there. When he saw her, Hua Jingyao slightly narrowed his eyes. His aura was shocking, and Su Peijian couldn't help but shrink back. Su Qinghui also rushed over after receiving the news. He was in a meeting, and came immediately after receiving the news. When he saw the guilty faces of Madame Luo and Madame Song, he was not in the mood to greet them. He only looked at Su Peijian. Peijian, what happened? He wasn't the only one who wanted to know. Hua Jingyao also wanted to know. He took a few steps forward and stood in front of Su Peijian. His cold eyes swept over her face without any warmth. I don't know either. Su Peijian was a little spoiled and a little willful. She had never taken anyone's life. Now that Xiang Kaiping had been hit by a car and her life was uncertain, she began to feel afraid. Dad, I really don't know. Enough. Su Qinghui's expression was a little ugly. It was rare for him to be so strict with Su Peijian. Tell me what happened. If she didn't know, how could she have sent Xiang Kaiping to the hospital? Su Peijian was Su Qinghui's biological daughter. If she was so frightened, Madame Luo and Madame Song were even more afraid to speak. Hua Jingyao took a step forward and stood beside Su Qinghui. He stared at Su Peijian's face with sharp eyes. Miss Su, I suggest that you speak clearly. After all, there are surveillance cameras at the place where you just had a car accident. I just need to look at the surveillance, and I can see everything. Su Peijian was even more afraid now. She swallowed and looked at her father and Hua Jinyao's gloomy faces. She told them what had happened in a very low voice. Of course, she simplified some things as much as possible. But how smart was Hua Jinyao? Just by listening to a few words, one could deduce half of the cause and effect. Stop talking about him. Even Su Qinghui could tell. Based on what happened today, it was obvious that Su Peijian wanted to make life difficult for Xiang Kaiping. Madame Luo and Madame Song were merely her helpers. After listening to the scene of Xiang Kaiping being hit by the car, Hua Jinyao was stunned. Su Qinghui couldn't take it anymore. He raised his hand and slapped Su Peijian's face. Su Peijian was stunned by the loud and heavy slap. Her face quickly swelled up. She covered her face and didn't dare to come back to her senses for a long time. Dad, you hit me? Yes, I hit you. Su Qinghui was very angry. He only felt a terrible headache. His head was buzzing. Su Peijian didn't dare to speak. Tears fell from the corners of her eyes. Half of it was because of the pain, and the other half was because she felt wronged. How dare Su Qinghui slap her in front of so many people? The humiliation was enough to make her cry. What did I say to you? What did I say to you? He had repeatedly told her to stay away from Xiang Kaiping and not to provoke her. But Su Peijian? She didn't listen to him at all. Instead, she turned a deaf ear to his words. How could he not be angry? Su Qinghui was so angry that his chest rose and fell violently. The huge anger made him completely lose his cool. Not only was he angry, but he was also disappointed and guilty. If Xiang Kaiping woke up one day and found out that it was Su Peijian who caused her car accident, what would she do? Su Qinghui didn't dare to think about it. Compared to his agitated self, Hua Jinyao was much calmer. Su Peijian naturally wanted to teach her a lesson. However, Su Qinghui's slap made him not rush to teach Su Peijian a lesson. His slender legs took a step forward, his tall body standing in front of Madame Luo and Madame Song. Madame Luo? Madame Song? Madame Luo and Madame Song were ordinary rich ladies. They usually went shopping, dressed up, and socialized with their husbands. They went to the spa and gossiped. Even if they looked down on people from a certain class, they wouldn't think of harming others. Now that Xiang Kaiping was in a car accident, both of them were frightened. Hua Jinyao's cold gaze suddenly swept over them. Their bodies trembled like leaves in the wind. Madams, I really didn't know that Hu Jingyao's mother-in-law would go and take a necklace worth millions from you. Madame Luo and Madame Song trembled even more. They didn't dare to respond to Hu Jingyao. Hu Jingyao stared at their frightened faces. He didn't plan to let it go just like that. Madame Xiang Kaiping is my wife's mother, my mother-in-law. Are you sure that she took your necklace? No. The two of them shook their heads quickly and snuggled up to each other tightly, almost hugging each other. Hu Jingyao snorted. That's good. After all, it's better to get to the bottom of this. Madams, don't you think so? Of course. Madame Luo and Madame Song were frightened. Hu Jingyao didn't think it was enough. Madame Luo, I remember that your family runs a department store business, right? Yes. Madame Luo didn't understand what Hu Jingyao wanted. Luoxing department store, Hu Jingyao added. Madame Luo's face turned even paler. Madame Song's family runs a retail and electronics business? Hu Jingyao had seen them at the party. Madame Song looked at Hu Jingyao with a pale face. What do you mean, President Hua? What did he mean? Hu Jingyao took out his phone and dialed a few numbers. He looked at Madame Luo and Madame Song on the phone. It's me. From now on, I will buy the shares of Luoxing Department Store and Kusong Group. Chapter 388. As soon as he said that, Madame Song and Madame Luo's bodies went limp, and they fell to the ground. They looked at Hu Jingyao in disbelief. Madame Luo took a long time to gather her courage. Hua, President Hua, you can't do this. If that person and her family knew about this, her good days would come to an end. She was really nervous, so nervous that her voice began to tremble. There's nothing I can't do. Hu Jingyao hung up the phone, his expression extremely cold. He looked down at the two of them, his eyes emotionless. Everyone has to bear the consequences of their actions. You're not children anymore, are you? Big drops of sweat rolled down Madame Song's forehead. Madame Luo thought about the anger she might have toward her husband when she got home. Her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Hu Jingyao didn't look at the two people on the ground. He went straight to Su Peijian, who was still crying and had a pale face. He glanced at Su Peijian's face. The others had already packed up. She was the only one left now. You. Su Peijian had heard what Hu Jingyao said. She couldn't believe that Hu Jingyao would really do that. Just because of a small dispute. What about me? Hu Jingyao was patient with Su Qingsang, but it didn't mean that he was patient with others. Su Qinghui frowned. Under Hu Jingyao's dark gaze, he discreetly stepped in front of Su Peijian. Jingyao, if there's anything, wait for Kaiping to come out. Hu Jingyao curled his lips slightly and looked at Su Qinghui mockingly. Dad, are you saying that I should just let it go? I've already hit her. When Su Qinghui said this, he didn't sound very confident. Hu Jingyao smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes at all. If Su Qingsang were here, she would know how rare it was to see Hu Jingyao, who was always smiling in front of her. Dad, what I mean is she. He raised his hand and casually pointed in Su Peijian's direction. She caused Su Qingsang's mother to get into a car accident, and you think that a slap is enough? Su Peijian's body trembled at the meaning of his words. She instinctively stood beside Su Qinghui. Even though she had just been slapped by Su Qinghui didn't make her feel as scared as Hu Jingyao. Su Qinghui naturally felt his daughter's fear. He took a few steps to the side, half blocking Su Peijian's body. Jingyao, that's not what I meant. I mean, there's nothing more important than Kaiping right now. Xiang Kaiping was still in the emergency room. Even if Hu Jingyao wanted to punish Su Peijian, he would have to wait until she woke up. That's not a conflict. Hu Jingyao raised his chin, and his eyes were sharp. The surgery won't end so soon anyway. I just happen to have time to settle the accounts. Jingyao, I'm afraid Qingsang won't agree with your decision, right? Qingsang is not here now. Why? Can't I make the decision for you? That's not what I mean. What do you mean, Dad? Hu Jingyao took a step forward and stood in front of Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui was not short. He was 1.8 meters tall. However, in front of Hu Jingyao, who was 1.8 meters tall, he was still a little less imposing. Hu Jingyao, I didn't say that this matter is over. But Kaiping is still in the operating room. Before he could finish his words, a nurse had already come out. Su Qinghui and Hua Jinyao thought that the surgery was over. They immediately went forward to ask the nurse about the situation. The nurse understood their feelings and explained briefly. The surgery is not over yet. The patient is bleeding heavily. We're going to the blood bank to get type O blood now. The nurse was about to run to get the plasma as she spoke. Hua Jinyao looked at the nurse's face. He asked worriedly, "Do you have enough blood in the blood bank?" "Yes. Our hospital has more than enough type O blood." After saying this, the nurse ran away. Hua Jinyao was not completely relieved, but he was more or less relieved. He turned to look at Su Qinghui and found that his expression was a little strange. He thought that he was worried about Xiang Kaiping and sneered. "I've already called Qingsang to inform her. Dad, I really want to know how you plan to explain to Qingsang when she comes back." Didn't he stop him from punishing Su Peijian now? He didn't believe that he could stop him for a while, but he couldn't stop him forever. "I don't need to explain this matter to Qingsang. I only need to explain to Xiang Kaiping." Su Qinghui was very worried about Xiang Kaiping now. Not only was he worried, but he also blamed himself. He didn't expect that he couldn't stop Su Peijian from causing trouble for Xiang Kaiping. However, under the current situation, he couldn't let Hua Jinyao deal with Su Peijian first. After all, Su Peijian was Xiang Saiping's daughter, her biological daughter. "Is that so?" Hua Jinyao sneered and looked at Su Peijian, who was still pale. "I hope you can say the same thing when Qingsang comes back. Jinyao, we're family." "Is it a family?" Hua Jinyao interrupted him rudely and glanced in Su Peijian's direction. "Can you make Qingsang's mother get into a car accident just because we're family?" Su Peijian was already guilty and didn't dare to say anything, but Hua Jinyao's words made her feel very unconvinced. I didn't do it on purpose." Hua Jinyao's eyes were like arrows. "You made her get into a car accident without doing it on purpose. Then if you did it on purpose, wouldn't you want to kill her?" I. Su Peijian still wanted to say something, but Su Qinghui glared at her and said, "Shut up." Su Peijian didn't dare to say anything. The nurse came back with the type O blood and rushed into the operating room. Hua Jinyao was in no mood to pay attention to Su Peijian. He rushed over from the company and had a lot of things to deal with. His phone didn't stop ringing. He answered a few calls. Not long after, his assistant came over with a laptop and a pile of documents. Hua Jinyao was dealing with work in the corridor when his phone rang again. He was about to hang up but quickly picked up when he saw that it was Su Qingsang. "Qingsang, how's my mother?" Su Qingsang's voice was full of panic. "I've already bought the plane ticket. It'll take off in half an hour. Tell me first, how's my mother?" "Mom is still in surgery." Hua Jinyao glanced at the operating room. "I don't know the details yet. We'll only know when the doctor comes out. Why did she get into a car accident?" Su Qingsang's face was full of anxiety. "And why is she still in surgery? Hasn't it been a long time?" "Yes. The situation might be a little complicated." Chapter 389. Hua Jinyao didn't see it with his own eyes. According to the situation at the time, Xiang Saiping's body was sent flying and then fell to the ground. It was likely that her internal organs were damaged. He just didn't know where he fell. He didn't know much about this, so he didn't know what would happen. Then, Su Qingsang used to be a doctor, so she was used to calming the patient's family down. But when it really happened to her, she realized that she couldn't stay calm at all. "Calm down first." He decided to take a nap after boarding the plane. "I'll send someone to pick you up. You don't have to worry. I believe Mom will be fine." Hua Jinyao, I. She couldn't calm down or believe him. She had just acknowledged Xiang Kaiping as her mother, and she had just developed a mother-daughter relationship with her. She thought she could make up for the motherly love she had missed for the past 20 years. But now, she was afraid that she would lose the motherly love that she had just received. Hearing Su Qingsang's panicked voice, Hua Jinyao's heart ached slightly. He could understand Su Qingsang. It was like a drowning man catching a piece of driftwood. Those who had lost their loved ones would never be willing to lose their loved ones again. Thinking of the blow Su Qingsang would suffer if something really happened to Xiang Kaiping, he couldn't find a way to comfort her. He heard a rustling sound. Su Qingsang seemed to have taken the phone away from her. Hua Jinyao took a deep breath and was about to comfort her when he heard a male voice on the other end of the phone. "Junior sister, don't be like this. I believe Auntie will be fine." Hua Jinyao's hand, which was holding the phone, froze. "Zhuo Hongchen? It's him, right? Why did he go to Song City?" Su Qingseng didn't say anything, but just shook her head. "Junior Marshal sister, don't be like this. Auntie is still waiting for you to take care of her." Su Qingseng glanced at him, thought about his words, and finally nodded. "That's more like it." Zhuo Hongchen had a surgery with the people from Song City Central Hospital today. As soon as she finished the surgery, she saw Su Qingseng coming to the hospital office in a panic to ask for leave, saying that she wanted to go back to Lin City. It was the first time he had seen such an expression on Su Qingsang's face. After asking, he found out that something had happened to Su Qingsang's mother. He knew that Su Qingsang was an illegitimate daughter, and had always thought that she didn't have a mother by her side. But now, he knew that wasn't the case. Taking off his scrubs, he accompanied her to the airport. He had planned to go back with Su Qingsang. However, he was one of the backbone this time, and Su Qingsang had left. He couldn't be so willful. "Senior brother, I'm fine. Thanks for driving me here. I'll board the plane myself later." "Then be careful." Zhuo Hongchen was still very worried. However, it was obvious that Su Qingsang wanted to be alone. "You can go back. I'm going in now." Su Qingsang took the suitcase from Zhuo Hongchen's hand and was about to enter the gate when she realized that her phone was still on. She was stunned for a moment, but she couldn't care about anything else now. "Jinyao, I'm here." Hua Jinyao hadn't hung up the phone, so naturally, he heard the conversation between Su Qingsang and Zhuo Hongchen. He wasn't jealous, but he definitely felt a little uncomfortable. Zhuo Hongchen's intentions were too obvious. Everyone could see it. "Get on the plane first and get a good night's sleep. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it when you come back." Su Qingsang didn't say anything. In fact, it was really difficult to calm down at a time like this. "Qingsang, listen to me." Hua Jinyao's voice was very calm. "Our mother is still waiting for you to take care of her. If you keep this attitude, even if you come back, you won't be able to take good care of our mother." Strangely, the same words that Zhuo Hongchen had said just now didn't calm her down as much as Hua Jinyao did now. She nodded lightly and suppressed the tears in her eyes. "I know. Thank you, Hua Jinyao." She looked at the people queuing up in front of her, put away her phone, and walked into the gate. When Hua Jinyao called, Su Qinghui was also there. Mrs. Song was no longer there. Mrs. Luo had fainted and asked someone to help her to see a doctor. Su Peijian wanted to leave but couldn't. She was ordered by Su Qinghui to stay there. She could only sit on the other side of the bench in a daze, not moving. Su Qinghui heard Hua Jinyao's words. The look in his eyes was very complicated. Su Qingsang was coming back to take care of Xiang Kaiping? In fact, the person who should be taking care of Xiang Kaiping at this time should be Su Peijian. He looked at Su Peijian with some disappointment in his eyes. He had been working hard to give the best to Su Peijian. He had been educating Su Peijian. Since she was in high school, he had brought her with him and asked her to help with some business matters. He had also been very diligent in cultivating Su Peijian. She had been dancing, playing piano, calligraphy, and playing chess since she was a child. Su Peijian was also smart and attentive. However, she had learned so much, but he had forgotten to give her a good personality. He had always felt that as long as he was there, he would always be able to protect Su Peijian. She was a girl, so what if she was a little spoiled? Couldn't his daughter be a little spoiled? However, he didn't expect so many things to happen later. Now Su Peijian had a conflict with Xiang Kaiping. Not only did the conflict happen, but Xiang Kaiping was also hurt. Su Qinghui really couldn't tell what he was feeling. If he could, he actually wanted to teach Su Peijian a lesson. However, he was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would feel bad if she knew. After struggling for a while, Su Qinghui's expression became a little ugly. Hua Jinyao didn't know that Su Qinghui's ugly expression was because of these struggles. He saw that Su Qinghui still had some conscience, and knew that he was worried about Xiang Kaiping. He didn't care about him for the time being. He planned to deal with these business matters first, and when Su Qingsang came back, he could accompany her. 2 hours later, Xiang Kaiping finally came out of the operating room. At the same time, Su Qingsang's plane had also landed in Lin City. Hua Jinyao had already arranged for someone to pick her up. Now he was more concerned about Xiang Kaiping. "Doctor, how is my mother?" The spleen ruptured and caused a lot of bleeding. In addition, her lumbar vertebra was fractured, and she hit her head. She has a slight concussion. Right. Did the patient hurt her lumbar vertebra before? Yes. Hua Jinyao remembered the fall in Rong City. At that time, he thought that Xiang Kaiping was faking it, but he didn't expect that it was a real fall. Then be careful next time. We have already corrected her bones through surgery, but for the rest of the time, it's best that the patient doesn't move. She needs to rest in bed. Then she will slowly undergo rehabilitation. Okay, I understand. Hua Jinyao nodded, but he was still a little worried. It would take 100 days to recover from an injury, not to mention that Xiang Kaiping was not young anymore. After the fall last time, he didn't pay attention to it anymore, nor did he ask about it. Chapter 390. Hearing that, Su Qinghui almost couldn't stand still. Xiang Kaiping would be paralyzed? He looked at the doctor nervously, for fear that he would say something bad. She won't be paralyzed. However, I'm afraid that the patient won't be able to exert force on her lumbar spine for a long time. She'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. The doctor understood the family's concerns. Rehabilitation will be good in the future. It won't affect her movements. But you still have to be careful. After all, she's not young anymore. If the rehabilitation is not good, I'm afraid that the disease will be permanent. Okay, we'll be careful. Hua Jinyao began to plan to hire professional care workers, nutritionists, and physiotherapists. When the patient was in the car accident, she fell on her head. We've already examined her. Other than a concussion, there was no intracranial bleeding. It shouldn't be a big problem. The most serious is the hemorrhage caused by the rupture of the spleen. The patient also went into shock several times during the surgery because of the hemorrhage. After the surgery, we've repaired the ruptured spleen. However, the body is weak because of the hemorrhage. It will take some time to recover. Good doctor. Does that mean that she has no other problems now? Not for the time being. The patient's anesthesia hasn't worn off yet. When she wakes up, you can call us for a detailed examination. After all, a head injury could be serious or minor. Although the examination had been done, the results would only be known when the patient woke up. Thank you, doctor. Hua Jinyao took care of the rest. He didn't let Su Qinghui get involved at all. When Su Qingsang arrived at the hospital, Xiang Kaiping was already in the ward. Hua Jinyao was sitting not far from the bed. There was a laptop in front of him, and a pile of reports and documents beside him. He seemed to be very busy. Yang Wenchang stood behind her with a few documents in his hand, obviously waiting for Hua Jinyao to sign. Jinyao, wife. Hua Jinyao saw her, and stood up immediately. Su Qingsang didn't look at him, but rushed to the bed. How is my mother? How is she? Xiang Kaiping's face was pale, and she lay motionless on the bed. Su Qingsang's eyes were red. She really wished that she was the one who got into the car accident. Hua Jinyao signed the documents in his hand and handed them to Yang Wenchang, gesturing for him to leave. After Yang Wenchang left with the documents, he stepped forward and stood in front of Su Qingsang. Your mom is fine for now. Hua Jinyao knew what she was thinking and repeated the doctor's words. That's the situation. The anesthetic hasn't worn off yet. Plus, he lost too much blood before, so he might only wake up tomorrow. Excessive blood loss? Did you get a blood transfusion? I lost 600 cc. 600? Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping, her eyes full of heartache. What about now? Are you all right now? Sort of. Rehabilitation is very important. Hua Jinyao didn't intend to hide it from her, so he told her about the problem with Xiang Kaiping's lumbar spine. Su Qingsang looked guilty. It's all my fault. He should have paid more attention to it when he was in Rong City. I shouldn't have come back when my mom asked me to take care of her. What if she falls ill? Don't worry. It'll be fine. Hua Jinyao held her hand tightly. You didn't know her identity at that time, did you? Furthermore, we will hire the best physiotherapist and doctor to treat him. I think he'll be fine. Su Qingsang didn't say anything but nodded vigorously. Hua Hua Jinyao held her hand, only to find that it was very cold. He felt a little sad and helpless. He held her hand tightly and put it in his arms. Your hand is so cold. Didn't Wenchang turn on the air conditioner when he went to pick you up? He did. Su Qingseng shook her head, her eyes still on Xiang Kaiping. I just feel uneasy. Hua Jinyao didn't say anything. Su Qingseng was in a bad mood, so she opened the car window for some fresh air. However, her hands and face were cold from the wind. Reaching out, he pulled her body into his embrace. He hugged her tightly and forcefully. Wife, you don't need to feel uneasy. There is no need to be unsettled. You are not alone. You have me. Su Qingseng didn't look up. Her face was still pressed against his chest. She looked at Xiang Kaiping. Why do you think my mom has such a hard life? In the first half of her life, her lover was taken away and separated from her own flesh and blood. In the second half of her life, she thought she could finally enjoy some happiness. However, something like this happened. Hua Jinyao, I really wish that I was the one who got into the car accident. That way, wife. Hua Jinyao suddenly held her shoulders and made her look into his eyes. Don't say things like that. Su Qingseng looked at him blankly. Hua Jinyao's expression was quite serious and serious. Your mom is very important to you, but you are also very important to me. Su Qingseng bit her lip and couldn't find her voice for a long time. Finally, she nodded gently. I understand. Wife, I hope you understand. You can call me selfish or cold-blooded, but I'm really glad that you weren't the one who got into an accident. Otherwise, Hua Jinyao couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't do something crazy. Su Qingseng was shocked by his expression. Her uneasy heart calmed down a lot. She reached out and hugged Hua Jinyao. She looked at Xiang Kaiping, whose face was as pale as a sheet. Hua Jinyao, I won't say this anymore. I just hope that my mom will be fine now. Don't worry. She will be fine. I hope so. Su Qingseng closed her eyes. Studying in Song City for more than a week had been a very happy thing. After all, she could exchange ideas and learn from so many seniors. But now, all that happiness had turned into self-blame. She was very regretful and upset. If she had known, she wouldn't have gone to Song City. If she hadn't gone, Xiang Kaiping might have been fine. Thinking of this, Su Qingseng suddenly let go. She took a step back and looked at Hua Jinyao. By the way, where is the person who hit my mom? Where is he? Hua Jinyao frowned and thought about what to say. What's wrong? Escaped? You didn't catch him? Su Qingseng only heard Hua Jinyao say that Xiang Kaiping was hit by a car. She didn't say who hit her. I've already sent that person to the traffic police. Hua Jinyao's voice was calm. Thinking of Su Peijian, he decided to tell her about it. In fact, although your mom got into a car accident because that person drove a little too fast, you can't completely blame him. But the person who caused her car accident can't be completely blamed on that person. What do you mean? Su Qingseng suddenly became nervous. Hua Jinyao didn't hide anything and told her about Su Peijian. He was objective. When Xiang Kaiping's surgery was over, he asked someone to pull up the surveillance video. Chapter 391. That's how it is. Su Peijian? Su Qingseng's face darkened. Her lips were pursed into a straight line, and there was obvious anger in her clear, watery eyes. It's good that you're back. Your father stopped me from dealing with Su Peijian just now. Tell me how you want to punish her. In fact, Su Peijian didn't do anything. It had always been Madame Luo and Madame Song who did the dirty work, even though the ones who did it were Madame Luo and Madame Song. However, if Su Peijian hadn't played tricks behind the scenes, the two of them wouldn't have made things difficult for Xiang Kaiping. In the end, it was all because of Su Peijian. Su Qingseng didn't know. In fact, she had just promised Li Qinxue to leave Lin City. She could empathize with Su Peijian. She had been slapped by Xiang Kaiping, and there was no way she could get over it. However, she should not have harmed Xiang Kaiping. Su Qingseng felt a little conflicted. Before she could figure out what kind of price to make Su Peijian pay, someone knocked on the door of the ward. The man who came in was Su Qinghui. He was carrying 2 bags in his hands. He paused for a moment when he saw Su Qingseng, but he wasn't surprised. He left the moment Xiang Kaiping was out of danger. Hua Jinyao thought that he left because he was too ashamed to face Xiang Kaiping. He didn't expect that he went to buy dinner. It's getting late. You guys should eat something. Hua Jinyao stood still. Su Qingsang looked at Su Qinghui, her biological father, who had never done anything for her. No need. Su Qingsang's voice was cold. I don't want to eat the food you give me. Qingsang. Su Qinghui was stunned. He didn't expect that. Su Qingsang's expression did not change. Where's Su Peijian? Hiding after getting into trouble? Su Qinghui frowned at her words. What do you mean? She's also tired, so I asked her to go back and rest. Tired? Why is she tired? Su Qingsang stared at Su Qinghui's face. Her eyes were sharp and full of hatred. How could she be tired? She took a step forward and stood in front of Su Qinghui. She doesn't have to do it herself. He didn't even need to move his mouth. Just one look, one expression, and someone will stand up for her. Stand up for her, right? Su Qingsang. Su Qinghui shouted in a low voice. Noticing Hua Jinyao's rather unfriendly gaze, he took a few deep breaths and said, Peijian didn't want this to happen. It was done by Madame Luo and Madame Song. Hua Jinyao had already punished them. You too. Their punishment is their business. Where's Su Peijian? No matter how good-tempered she was, she had a bottom line. Tell me, where is Su Peijian? Qingsang, no matter what, Peijian is your sister. Moreover, she now knew that she was wrong. Su Peijian is my sister and Xiang Kaiping is my mother. Su Qingsang raised her voice and glared at Su Qinghui coldly. What's more, Dad, ask yourself, did Su Peijian ever see me as her little sister? Does she really think of me as her sister? Su Qinghui was speechless. He couldn't say a word to Su Qingsang's question. Qingsang, let's not discuss this matter for now. But I believe that if your mother wakes up, she won't want you to deal with Peijian. After all, do you think my mother won't want me to deal with Su Peijian? Su Qingsang acted as if she had heard a joke. Dad, are you out of your mind? What reason did Xiang Kaiping have to forgive Su Peijian? I think I might have to remind you that in Japan, Su Peijian called me an illegitimate daughter, the daughter of a mistress. My mother slapped her in the face. I know that. That slap made Su Peijian do all those things. But Dad, look at your conscience. Is my mother a mistress? Who caused me to become an illegitimate daughter? Su Qinghui couldn't say a word. He had always thought that Su Qingsang was a good-tempered person. He didn't know that even a good-tempered person would lose her temper one day. Dad, I don't ask you to be nice to me. I don't ask you to be nice to my mother. You are married now and have your own family. You have a wife and children. I understand all that. But your family is family. Isn't my family my family? Su Peijian was slapped by my mother. Both you and Auntie felt the same. You and Auntie came to find me one by one. If you want to blame me, blame my mother. What about my mother? My mother was hit by a car because of Su Peijian. Does Su Peijian want to just let it go without paying any price? Su Qingsang's words were filled with anger. Even if Su Peijian wasn't the main person responsible. But she was still responsible, wasn't she? I've already hit her. Su Qinghui thought of the tears on Su Peijian's face when she came home, and felt a little heartache. No matter how angry he was with Su Peijian, she was still his daughter, who he had loved for so many years. I've really taught her a lesson. She knows she was wrong. Murderers also said they knew they were wrong after killing someone. Su Qingsang didn't intend to let it go just like that. But why does the law still sentence them? Qingsang. Su Qinghui didn't know where to start. He had a stomach full of words, but he couldn't say a word. Get out. I don't want to see you. Heartless. Unfaithful to Li Qinxue and Xiang Kaiping. Said he loved Xiang Kaiping, but married Li Qinxue. Said he loved Li Qinxue, but couldn't forget Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping was in trouble, but he couldn't even help her vent her anger. Su Qingsang didn't think so before, but now she really felt that her father was a scumbag. Qingsang, get out. Su Qingsang's voice was even higher than before. Neither my mother nor I want to see you. Su Qinghui didn't say anything. He raised the lunchbox in his hand and put it down again. He took one last look at Hua Jinyao and put the lunchbox on the table beside him. Qingsang, no matter how angry you are, you still have to eat. I'm sorry about your mother. Don't worry. I'll definitely teach Peijian a good lesson. Su Qingseng didn't say anything. She didn't believe that Su Qinghui could bear to teach Su Peijian a lesson, but now she didn't want to lower herself to his level. Su Qinghui left, leaving only Su Qingseng and Hu Jinyao in the ward. Su Qingseng looked at the lunch box and didn't touch it. The sky outside darkened. Xiang Kaiping hadn't woken up yet. There were many tubes in her body. Su Qingseng felt a pang of heartache. She hadn't eaten lunch. After receiving the news, she rushed back as soon as she could. Now she was thirsty and hungry, but she had no appetite at all. Hu Jinyao stood beside her and put his arm around her shoulders, silently encouraging her. Sometimes, I really hope that Su Qinghui isn't my father. Hu Jinyao didn't say anything. His gaze was deep. In fact, Su Qinghui's actions today puzzled him again. Chapter 392. He was different from Su Qingseng, who had lost her mind because of anger. Hu Jinyao had been calm. He could tell that even though Su Qinghui had calmed down, he could still feel the anger in his heart. The anger toward Su Peijian. He believed that he meant it when he said he would teach Su Peijian a lesson. It wasn't fake. But if he could teach Su Peijian a lesson for Xiang Kaiping, and even his daughter, whom he had doted on for more than 20 years, why was he so cold to Su Qingseng, Xiang Kaiping's daughter? The feeling that Hu Jinyao had felt before came again. There was a flash of doubt in the depths of his heart. Before he could think clearly, his phone rang. It was from Yang Wenchang. The driver had been arrested by the traffic police. But because Xiang Kaiping fell out of the car herself, she had to take the main responsibility. But the driver was also detained for dangerous driving. Hu Jinyao hung up the phone and told Su Qingseng about it. That man drove a little fast, but he didn't. The driver drove a little fast, but he wasn't speeding at that time. So there shouldn't be any more severe punishment than being detained for a few days and having his driver's license revoked. Su Qingseng didn't speak. She looked at Xiang Kaiping and said, I don't care what happens to those people now. I just want my mother to wake up soon. Mom will be fine. She will. Xiang Kaiping was a very good person. Good people would be rewarded. Hu Jinyao convinced Su Qingseng. She looked at the dinner Su Qinghui brought. If you put it in the room, you can smell it. Let's eat. He had asked Yang Wenchang to order food. It'll be a waste if we don't eat. Su Qingseng glanced at him. Was he afraid of wasting food? I don't want to eat the food he brought. Su Qingseng wasn't angry. If Su Qinghui still wanted to protect Su Peijian, she really couldn't eat the food he brought. I think you should eat. Hu Jinyao opened the lunchbox and took out the food inside. Think about it. Your mother is still unconscious. You can't do anything to your father. Why don't you take this opportunity to torture your father? Is it to avenge your mother? When he met Su Qingseng's disapproving gaze, he raised his hand. I'm telling the truth. Think about it. You should be tormenting your father with all your might right now. What's the point of asking him to deliver food? You should let him do other things like take care of your mother. And, nonsense again. Who asked him to take care of my mother? Su Qinghui was afraid that Su Qinghui would only make things worse. Yes, our mom doesn't need him to take care of her. It's enough for us to take care of him. Hu Jinyao's words made Su Qingseng glare at him. But she was in a much better mood. She sat down by the bed and looked at Xiang Kaiping's pale face. Her voice was very soft. My mother won't want him to take care of her. Xiang Kaiping's love for Su Qinghui was so strong. How could she let him take care of her now that she hated him so much? Let's eat. Su Qingseng had no appetite, but she still ate a little. After dinner, Su Qingseng asked the doctor on duty about Xiang Kaiping's medical history. He then asked for more details. The doctor on duty was surnamed Jiang. Dr. Jiang showed Su Qingseng the list. Su Qingseng was also a medical student, so she read through all the lists. Su Qingseng was stunned when she saw the blood transfusion form and the cost on it. Was Xiang Kaiping type O? She remembered that she was before she could think about it. Dr. Jiang had already said, Dr. Su, don't worry. Your mother will be fine. And your husband has already paid for the blood transfusion. Su Qingseng didn't want to ask about that, but she still nodded. Although Dr. Jiang worked in the same hospital as Su Qingseng, They were usually in different departments and didn't have much contact. However, he was also a wonderful person. He winked at Su Qingsang. Speaking of which, you have a really good husband. Your mother came not long after she was sent here. He seems to be quite busy with work, but he has been busy all the time. He is considerate. Su Qingsang looked at him, a little shy but also a little satisfied. He was obviously praising Hu Jinyao, but she felt happier than if he was praising herself. He is quite good. You have to cherish him. Dr. Zhang's expression was a little teasing. Just because he is so attentive to his mother-in-law, you have to treat him better. I know. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. She put the stack of medical records back in Dr. Zhang's hand. All right, I'll go back first if there's nothing else. Okay. You are a doctor too. You know everything you need to know. Take good care of your mother. I will. The thought that flashed through Su Qingsang's mind disappeared just like that. It was already late when she returned to the ward. Hu Jinyao was still dealing with work. Seeing her come back, he put down the pen in his hand. How is it? What did the doctor say? Nothing. I just wanted to know the basic situation. She also wanted to take better care of Xiang Kaiping. Hu Jinyao nodded. Su Qingsang looked at him and stood beside him. Her eyes fell on the computer and the documents in front of him. If you are really busy, why don't you go home first? I'll be here today. It's okay. If you are not at home, I will be bored if I go home. Hu Jinyao pulled her to sit on his lap. You don't have to be so polite with me. I like to be with you. Su Qingsang nodded and sighed in her heart. Then what about your shower and change clothes? I will go home again tomorrow morning, Hu Jinyao said indifferently. Su Qingsang nodded and wrapped her arms around Hu Jinyao's waist. Hu Jinyao, will my mother wake up tomorrow? Yes, definitely. Really? Su Qingsang was not as confident as him. Will my mother really not be paralyzed? I asked Dr. Jiang, but he is still worried. Definitely not. If Lin City can't be cured, we will go to Rong City. If Rong City can't cure her, we will go abroad. There will always be a place that can cure our mother. Okay. Since he said so, Su Qingsang could only believe him. She wrapped her arms around Hu Jinyao's hand and gently rubbed her face against his chest. Hu Jinyao. Yes. Thank you. With him by her side, no matter what difficulties she faced, she felt at ease and at ease. Hu Jinyao wrapped his arms around her waist and looked at the top of her head. We are husband and wife. Su Qingsang did not say anything. She was now completely focused on Xiang Kaiping. She only hoped that she would get better soon and wake up soon. That night, Su Qingsang did not sleep well. She had dreams the whole night. Hu Jinyao did not sleep. He sat by the bed and looked at Su Qingsang's face. He reached out and held her hand, silently comforting her. His palm was warm. Su Qingsang felt the warmth of his palm and slowly calmed down. Finally she fell asleep. The next day, Su Qingsang woke up very early. She did not sleep well in the first half of the night, but she slept well in the second half of the night. She was in high spirits. Chapter 393. Fortunately, Xiang Kaiping was in good condition. Her vital signs were stable. Hu Jinyao just came out of the bathroom. Seeing Su Qingsang let out a sigh of relief, he took a few steps forward. Why didn't you sleep a little longer? I saw that you didn't sleep much last night. I did. You're the one who didn't sleep much. I'm used to it. Hu Jinyao squeezed her palm. I've asked Yang Wenchang to bring breakfast over. You eat a little later. Don't be too tired. I've asked him to find 2 caregivers. If there's anything, let them do it. I'm fine. And I don't need a caregiver for the time being. I want to take care of my mother myself. I don't want you to be too tired. Hu Jinyao didn't agree with her decision. Honey, you have to understand that your mother can't recover in a day or two. She needs to be taken care of for a long time. You can't be alone all the time. Tigers still need to take naps. You can't make yourself sick just to take care of your mother, can you? I know. Su Qingsang couldn't refute him. Then I promise you that I'll take care of her today. When she wakes up, I'll see what happens. Okay. As long as she didn't insist on taking care of her himself. Soon, Yang Wenchang had already arrived with breakfast in his hands. But there was only one. What do you want to eat? I'm going home. Hua Jingyao looked at the time. I have a meeting today. I might not be able to come over until the afternoon. It's okay. Su Qingseng knew that he was tired after 2 days. You can go and do your work. I can handle it here. Besides, I'm a staff member of this hospital myself. They'll help. That's good. Hua Jingyao patted her on the shoulder. Call me if you need anything. Okay. Before he left, Su Qingseng stepped forward and hugged him. She quickly let go. She took a step back with a determined look in her eyes. Hua Jingyao was a little moved. If Yang Wenchang hadn't been standing next to him, he would have held the woman in his arms and kissed her. Let's go. He gestured for Yang Wenchang to walk out. After Yang Wenchang turned around, Hua Jingyao leaned over and kissed Su Qingseng on the cheek. Su Qingseng glanced at Yang Wenchang nervously, then gently patted him on the back. However, there was a faint smile on his face. I'll have someone send you lunch. The food in your hospital isn't that good. Yes. Su Qingseng nodded and watched Hua Jingyao walk out. She could still feel the warmth of his lips on her cheek. She blinked her eyes and turned back to sit by the bed. She took out the lunchbox. He looked at Xiang Kaiping, who was still asleep. Mom, look, if you don't wake up, I'll have to eat breakfast alone again. Wake up quickly. When you wake up, you can have breakfast with me. Xiang Kaiping was still lying motionless. Su Qingsong's eyes were a little wet, but she was not in a hurry. He finished his breakfast. She fetched some water to wipe Xiang Kaiping's face and hands. When he was done, the doctor came to check on him. Yesterday Dr. Jiang was not here. Today 2 other doctors were here. He was also the one who operated on Xiang Kaiping yesterday. Dr. Su, are you taking care of her here by yourself? Dr. Li looked at Su Qingseng, and then at Xiang Kaiping. Your mother's condition is good today. The anesthesia has worn off. She should wake up later. You don't have to worry. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Li. You're welcome. It's just that her waist has been injured before. She needs to be more careful in the future. Otherwise, it might affect her life and actions in the future. I know. I'll be careful. Su Qingseng was also a doctor, so Dr. Li did not say anything more. Su Qingseng saw them off. When she looked up, she saw Su Qinghui standing at the door. He was holding a fruit basket in one hand and a women's bag in the other. He stood at the door and seemed to have been there for a while. He wanted to come in just now, but because there was a doctor inside, he did not come in. Su Qingsong's lips were pressed into a straight line. She looked at Su Qinghui coldly. She turned around and wanted to enter the ward. Su Qinghui wanted to follow, but Su Qingseng raised her hand and was about to close the door. Qingseng. Su Qinghui took a step forward and blocked the door with his foot, not letting Su Qingseng close it. Get out. My mother won't want to see you. Qingseng, this is what you want, not what your mother wants. What I want is what my mother wants. Su Qingseng blocked the door with her body and looked resistant. I said my mother won't want to see you. Qingseng, I'm your father. Su Qinghui was a little annoyed by Su Qingsong's attitude. Su Qingseng stood up and looked at Su Qinghui in front of her. It's rare that you still remember that you're my father. I thought that in your heart, only Su Peijian is your daughter. You. A what? Su Qingseng did not budge at all. Go. I said that my mother won't want to see you. Su Qinghui looked at her and took a deep breath. You're not calm now. I won't argue with you. I'm very calm. Su Qingseng looked at him. I'm very calm. That's why I can stand here and talk to you. Otherwise, I should rush to the Su family right now and teach Su Peijian a lesson. I said, I've already taught her a lesson. Yes. You should have slapped her. Su Qingseng nodded. I got it. You can go now. Qingseng. Su Qinghui looked at Su Qingseng and did not want to argue with her. I came here today not only to see your mother, but also to give you this. As he spoke, he raised the bag in his hand. Su Qingseng saw that there was blood on the bag. The blood covered the color of the bag, but she could tell that it was Xiang Kaiping's. She reached out and took it. Why is my mother's bag with you? After your mother got into a car accident yesterday, this fell on the road. Peijian picked it up for her, but it fell in her car yesterday. She gave it to me when she got home. Really? Thank her. Su Qingsang's tone was neither cold nor warm. Su Qinghui was not angry. There's a gift from your mother in this bag. I heard that she went to Bo Guzhai to buy you that gift. Su Qinghui did not know what to feel. He really did not expect that Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping could develop such a deep relationship in such a short time. Su Qingsang did not speak. She took the bag and opened it. There were 2 boxes wrapped in red flannels. They were about the same size. The words Bo Guzhai were printed on the packaging. She picked up one of them and opened it. There was a jade Buddha pendant inside. The jade pendant was obviously a good thing. It could not be bought without hundreds of thousands of yuan. Su Qingsang looked at the pendant inside and suddenly had an urge to cry. She lowered her head and did not look at Su Qinghui. Chapter 394. Su Qingsang was touched for a while. Before she had time to look at the other box, she found that Su Qinghui had entered the ward. She was so angry that she almost wanted to flare up. However, Xiang Kaiping, who was sleeping on the bed, seemed to be waking up. Mom! Su Qingsang quickly stepped forward, put her bag aside, stood in front of the bed, and reached out to hold Xiang Kaiping's hand. Mom, are you awake? On the bed, Xiang Kaiping's eyes were moving. She was in pain all over. Hearing her daughter's voice, she opened her eyes with great difficulty. Qing! Xiang Kaiping's voice was stuck in her throat after only one word. She had slept for an entire night and lost too much blood. Her body was weak, and her voice was extremely hoarse and unpleasant to hear. Mom, don't say anything yet. Su Qingsang quickly poured a glass of warm water. She wet a cotton swab and moistened her lips with it. He poured another cup and put the straw in it. He lifted her head and motioned for her to suck through the straw. At the same time, he pressed the bedside bell to call the doctor. Xiang Kaiping felt better after drinking some water. She looked at Su Qingsang, blinked, and finally recognized who the person in front of her was. Before she had finished her water, the doctor came. Xiang Kaiping was given a routine checkup and asked a few questions. At last, Dr. Li looked at Su Qingsang and said, Dr. Su, since your mother is awake, her concussion should be fine. The rest of the body will slowly recover, and it should be fine. Thank you, Dr. Li. Su Qingsang breathed a sigh of relief. Are you sure there won't be any side effects? I don't think so. Just pay more attention to your waist. All right. I will. Su Qingsang sent the doctor away and stood in front of the bed again. She looked at Xiang Kaiping and said, Mom, the anesthesia has worn off. You might feel a little pain. If you really feel uncomfortable, I'll prescribe some painkillers for you. Xiang Kaiping shook her head. She was in pain indeed. Her entire body ached. But now she couldn't care less about the pain. Qingsang? After drinking the water, Xiang Kaiping's throat felt much better. Her voice was not as hoarse as before. Why did you come back? Aren't you in Song City? Mom! Su Qingsang put the water aside and carefully put her head back on the pillow. You're already like this. How could I not come back? Look at you. Xiang Kaiping was a little anxious. She wanted to get up, but Su Qingsang pressed her shoulder down. Mom, don't be in such a hurry to move. Your lumbar spine is injured. You needed to recover properly during this period of time. You mustn't move around, or you'll have a lingering illness in the future. Xiang Kaiping's body did not move, but her eyes were full of anxiety. Child, why did you come back? This job was very important. Hurry back. I'm fine. How could you say that you're fine? Su Qingsang felt like crying. In the past, he had read the news that some parents chose not to tell their children about their illnesses or surgeries during the college entrance examination, so as not to affect their children. At that time, she couldn't understand why there would be such a parent. But now that she had encountered it, she was so touched that she wanted to cry. Mom, work is fine. It was true. I've already asked for leave. Don't worry. I will accompany you. It's all my fault. I've held you back. Xiang Kaiping looked guilty. Mom. What Xiang Kaiping said made Su Qingsang want to cry. She held her hand and said softly, Don't be like this. You didn't hold me back. I'm so glad I can take care of you. Really? Xiang Kaiping's face was pale. She was still a little conflicted. Su Qingsang held her hand tightly and said, Mom! Mom! I haven't been by your side for the past few decades. Don't stop me. Xiang Kaiping didn't object, but there were obvious tears in her eyes. Qingsang! Mom, don't talk. You've lost a lot of blood. Your body is weak now. You should take care. Xiang Kaiping nodded hard. The simple movement made her back hurt again. Su Qingsang felt sorry for her and held her hand. Mom, I'm begging you. Don't move. Lie down properly. Xiang Kaiping finally stopped moving. But at that moment, she saw Su Qinghui, who had been standing in the corner of the ward. With just one glance, her expression changed. Why are you here? Su Qingsang also saw Su Qinghui at that moment. Her expression was a little ugly. Dad, can I ask you to leave? Su Qinghui looked a little uncomfortable. He took a step forward, but didn't get close. Kaiping, don't be like this. Get out. I don't want to see you. If she could move, Xiang Kaiping would have chased after Su Qinghui herself. Kaiping, I just want to see you. You've seen me. You can leave. Xiang Kaiping's attitude was too firm and cold. Su Qinghui stood there for a moment, not knowing whether to move forward or retreat. Su Qingsang turned around and took 2 steps forward. Dad, I think it's better for you to leave. Qingsang, you saw it. My mom doesn't want to see you. Moreover, she can't help but get excited when she sees you. If you really want her to recover faster, you should hurry up and leave. Su Qinghui didn't want to leave. He felt very guilty, and besides the guilt, he also blamed himself. Su Peijian's unintentional action had hurt Xiang Kaiping, which he didn't expect. He felt that he should apologize to Xiang Kaiping. Qingsang asked him to leave. Su Qingsang raised her eyebrows and said coldly, Dad, you heard her. My mom really doesn't want to see you. Su Qinghui sighed. He didn't want to stay. He thought for a moment and said, Then Kaiping, I'll come to see you tomorrow. No, you don't have to come again. Xiang Kaiping's voice was very cold. I'm afraid that I won't recover if I see you. Su Qinghui didn't know what to say. He wanted to take another look at Xiang Kaiping, but Su Qingsang blocked his view. In the end, he had no choice but to turn around and leave. After he left, the two of them breathed a sigh of relief. Especially Su Qingsang. No matter what, Su Qinghui was her father. If he really insisted on staying, she might not be able to do anything about it. Mom, are you hungry? Su Qingsang sat down in front of the bed and looked at her with concern. But you have to bear with it. You can't eat anything for now. It had been less than 24 hours since the surgery. She could only get him 4 for now. It's okay. I'm not hungry. She had slept so well that she wouldn't be hungry. Xiang Kaiping reached out to hold Su Qingsang's hand. I'm useless. I wanted to help you. But now not only can I not help you, but I'm also a burden to you. Mom. Su Qingsang didn't like what she said. If you say that again, I'll be angry. Fine, I won't say it anymore. Xiang Kaiping looked around. Where's Jinyao? He went to work. Su Qingsang was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would misunderstand, so she quickly explained. He stayed here all day and night yesterday. When I was in Song City, he was the one running back and forth. He paid for the surgery. Chapter 395. Don't praise him. I'm afraid he'll be too proud. Su Qingsang joked with Xiang Kaiping. You're a good girl too. Xiang Kaiping smiled. Suddenly she let out a cry. Mom, what's wrong? Where's my bag? There's something in it. You mean this? Su Qingsang went to get it first and raised the bag in her hand. Yes, this. Xiang Kaiping smiled. Open it. Open it. Su Qingsang had seen it, but she still let out a cry of surprise when she saw the box inside, as if it was the first time she opened it. Do you like it? Xiang Kaiping smiled. I thought about how hard it is for you to work in a place like the hospital every day. I bought a jade Buddha for you to wear. I didn't know. Su Qingsang already knew, but her eyes were still a little red. She took out the jade Buddha and looked at Xiang Kaiping. Mom, seriously, why are you spending so much money? It's hundreds of thousands. It's nothing. Won't my money be yours in the future? Xiang Kaiping held her hand. Put it on and show me. Okay. Su Qingsang didn't refuse. It was a mother's wish, and she couldn't refuse it. He wore the jade Buddha statue around his neck. The jade Buddha statue was green in color and had a warm texture when held in his hand. Thank you, Mom. I like it very much. I'm glad you like it. Xiang Kaiping looked in the bag. There's a bracelet. It's a gift from the boss. See if you can wear it. Mom, I can't wear a bracelet. Su Qingseng shook her head. I need to have surgery. I can't wear a bracelet. Then keep it. You can wear it in the future. Thank you, Mom. Su Qingseng put the box away and put the bag aside. Mom, get better soon. You can wear this bracelet when the time comes. Su Qingseng held Xiang Saiping's hand as she spoke. Your wrist is very thin, and your bones are small. It will look good on you. I'm old. I don't need to think about it. Xiang Kaiping smiled. I just want you to be well now. Nothing else matters. Looking at Su Qingseng, she thought of the hard work she had in the past few decades and sighed. In fact, at my age, it's not a big deal to die like this. Now that I've acknowledged you, I have no regrets. Really? Mom, you're talking nonsense again. Su Qingseng held her hand tightly and didn't want to listen to her anymore. You can't say that you have no regrets. You haven't even seen the birth of your grandson, right? Take good care of yourself. I'm still waiting for you to take care of my child. Xiang Saiping's eyes widened. She seemed to be shocked by this suggestion, but soon she smiled. All right. Okay. That was right. I still want to live a little longer. I still want to see your baby born. I still want to be a grandmother. Yes. Su Qingseng nodded. She knew that Xiang Kaiping was determined to live on. In fact, many elderly people would feel depressed in their old age and feel that they were a burden to their children. If other elderly people thought that way, she would not allow Xiang Kaiping to think the same way. In fact, she only found out later that Xiang Kaiping looked old, but in fact, she was not even 50 years old. She was still a middle-aged person, not an elderly person at all. Xiang Kaiping didn't know if it was because she thought that she would be able to hold a grandson in the future, but the smile on her face became wider, and she looked much more energetic. Su Qingseng was relieved. Seeing that the infusion bottle was almost full, she changed it herself. Xiang Kaiping looked at her daughter's neat movements and smiled. Look, it's so good to have a daughter who is a doctor. You don't even need to change the bottle. Mom, everyone can do this. Su Qingseng said that, but she was still very happy. She really felt good to be able to take care of Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping couldn't eat, and she couldn't move because of the injury on her waist. She took out her phone and read the news to her. The mother and daughter exchanged some hot news, and the atmosphere was really good for a while. However, if there was too much infusion, Xiang Kaiping would still feel sleepy. Not long after, she fell asleep again. Su Qingseng tucked her in, looked at Xiang Saiping's face, and thought about what she just said about having a grandson for her. Maybe she could discuss with Hu Jiniao and stop using contraceptives? However, would Hu Jiniao want a child? Su Qingseng suddenly felt a little uncertain. In fact, Su Qingseng still wasn't sure if she could be a good mother. She always worried that she wouldn't know how to educate the child, especially when she thought of Su Peijian. Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue always wanted to give the best to Su Peijian. However, Su Peijian was a little spoiled. On the contrary, Su Yusen, who wasn't spoiled by Su Qinghui, was a little protective, but his personality was actually not bad. Thinking of this, she had prepared a gift for Su Yusen. Today was Friday. He would be back from school, and she couldn't send that gift to him now. At noon, Hu Jiniao sent someone to deliver food. When the food was delivered, Xiang Kaiping was still sleeping. Even if she was awake, she couldn't eat. After dinner, Su Qingseng cleaned up a bit. The care workers and physiotherapists that Hu Jiniao hired also came. Su Qingseng was a doctor, so she naturally knew what kind of care workers to choose. After asking, one of the care workers with the surname Ning stayed. She was in her 30s and very experienced. She was also very strong and looked very strong. In fact, care workers had to turn patients over from time to time. If they were too thin and weak, they really couldn't do it. As for the physiotherapist, Xiang Kaiping couldn't even get out of bed now. How could she do rehabilitation? She had to wait until she recovered better. Su Qingseng left the person's phone number and agreed to come when Xiang Kaiping could do rehabilitation. Although the person didn't stay, Su Qingseng was quite satisfied with Hu Jinyao's speed. Su Qingseng really felt that she couldn't be happier to have a husband by her side, who thought ahead of her in everything. She thought that when this busy period was over and Xiang Kaiping's body was more or less recovered, they would have a child. She believed that Xiang Kaiping wouldn't be the only one who would be very happy. Old Master Hua, who was far away in Rong City, would also be very happy, right? When Su Yusen returned home, he found that the atmosphere was a little strange. He had been at school 5 days a week and wasn't at home very often. Occasionally, he contacted his parents, either on the phone or through WeChat. He didn't even call them often. But if there was anything, someone at home would tell him. Entering the door, Li Qianxue didn't look very good. Not only was it not good, but it was also quite ugly. Su Qinghui didn't look very good either. He sat on the sofa opposite Li Qianxue, with a coffee table between the two of them. Su Peijian sat on the big sofa in the middle. Her eyes were red, as if she had been wronged. Sitting next to her, Old Master Li also had a cold face at this time. Chapter 396. Grandfather, Dad, Mom, Sister. Su Yusen took off his coat and went forward to greet them. A servant came up to help him take down his coat and hang it up. Su Yusen stood in front of the coffee table and looked at the situation in front of him. What's wrong? What happened? Li Qianxue didn't speak, and neither did Old Master Li. Su Qinghui frowned and didn't say a word. In the end, Su Yusen could only look at Su Peijian, hoping that she would give him an answer. Sister, Yusen, you came back at the right time. Su Peijian was about to cry. Look at Dad. He actually told me to go to America. I don't want to go. To America? Su Yusen glanced at Su Qinghui. Why are you going to the United States? Su Peijian stopped talking. Li Qianxue glared at Su Qinghui. The hatred in her heart was as deep as the ocean, but now, her face was cold and filled with anger. Dad, I don't want to go to America. I've already finished my master's degree. Why should I continue to study? Old Master Li sat there without saying a word. Study? Su Yusen glanced at Su Peijian. You still want to study? Yes. That's what Dad said. Su Peijian was furious. He told me to study in the United States for a few more years before coming back. I said I don't want to go. Old Master Li patted Su Peijian's hand and looked at Su Qinghui. Do you want to exile Peijian now? Do you want to give her up? Su Qinghui didn't look happy either. Dad, what are you talking about? I asked Peijian to study because I wanted her to cultivate her character. Cultivate her character? Li Qianxue couldn't stand it anymore. Do you want your daughter to cultivate her character, or do you want to exile her? You know it. I didn't mean that. Even if Su Qinghui had that intention, he wouldn't say it out loud. I'm sending her away now for her own good. Or should we wait for Hu Jinyao to deal with her? What right does Hu Jinyao have to punish her? Su Qinghui, you don't have to sound so noble. Your sweetheart is back, and you can't wait to give her your whole heart. What's a daughter worth? Li Qianxue gritted her teeth. Her heart was filled with hatred. Su Qinghui didn't treat her well, but he had given her the cold shoulder for so many years. It was her own choice. But now, he couldn't even tolerate her daughter? She used to think that he treated Su Peijian well, and thought that he still had a heart for this family. So it was because that woman did not return. Now that that woman was back, he only cared about Xiang Kaiping. How could he care about any of them? She caused Kai. Su Qinghui paused. She caused a car accident. Do you think Hu Jinyao will let it go? Was she the one who caused it? That's what Luo Fu and Madame Song did. What does it have to do with her? If that Madame Luo and Madame Song hadn't wanted to help her vent her anger, if not for her instigation, Madame Luo and Madame Song wouldn't have done so. Why would they want to make things difficult for someone who has nothing to do with them? Li Qianxue stood up abruptly. What? Was she that precious? Couldn't he vent his anger on her? She slapped my daughter in the face. As a father, you don't know how to stand up for your daughter. Instead, you're bullying your daughter and thinking of sending her away? What kind of logic is that? Even if Su Peijian's words and actions were inappropriate, there were hints. But Madame Luo and Madame Song went there on their own. What did it have to do with Su Peijian? Su Qinghui didn't want to argue with Li Qianxue about this. I only know that she is an adult. She has to pay for her actions. Pay? What price? Was she the one who hit the person? Was she the one who did it? She didn't kill Boren. Boren died because of her. Why isn't she responsible? Su Qinghui used to like to see Li Qianxue pretend to be Su Peijian. But today, he felt that he couldn't say anything. Su Qinghui, don't talk nonsense. It's obvious that you don't like us because that woman has come back. You don't need to say anything else. I won't allow you to send Peijian away. Li Qianxue, be reasonable. Su Qinghui, who's being unreasonable? Enough. Old Master Li's head hurt after listening to them for a long time. He knocked the cane in his hand hard. Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui stopped talking. Old Master Li looked at Li Qianxue first. His eyes were filled with disapproval and blame. Qianxue, you're not a little girl anymore. You're not a little girl anymore. You should control your temper. Don't you know what you can say and what you can't say? Dad. Li Qianxue felt wronged, but she couldn't say a word. And you, Qinghui. Old Master Li looked at Su Qinghui. Qinghui, it's been so many years. I don't think the Li family has done anything wrong to you. Dad, I didn't mean that. Even if Su Qinghui dared to talk back to Li Qianxue, he still respected Old Master Li very much. After all, for so many years, Old Master Li had been leading him in the business world hand in hand. He was also the one who taught him many things. He could not love Li Qianxue, but he did respect Old Master Li from the bottom of his heart. I know that I forced you to marry Qianxue back then, and you have resentment in your heart. But Qinghui, it's been more than 20 years, and Yusin is about to be 18. No matter how much resentment you have in your heart, seeing that Qianxue gave birth to 2 children for you, and has been working for you for so many years without any complaints, your resentment should be gone, right? Su Qinghui didn't speak. He couldn't respond to this. Some hatred and resentment couldn't be eliminated in a short period of time. Old Master Li sighed. I'm old. I can't interfere in your affairs anymore. You said that you're afraid that Huo Jinyao will settle the score with Peijian. I'm willing to go and talk to him. As for Peijian, looking at Su Peijian, Old Master Li said helplessly, there's no need for her to study, but it's fine for her to go to a short-term advanced course. Grandpa, Su Peijian bit her lip. She was actually quite dissatisfied with this arrangement. It's decided. You can all go. Old Master Li waved his hand. I said that I'm old, and I just want to see a happy family. I can't bear to see Peijian leave for a few years. It's fine to go there for a few months. When he met Su Peijian's dissatisfied gaze, his voice became harsher. There is indeed something wrong with your personality. Too arrogant, too willful. It's good that your father wants you to go away for a while. Since Old Master Li had spoken, this matter could only be decided this way. No matter how dissatisfied Su Peijian was, she could only agree to this decision. However, she still couldn't accept it. She stood up and stomped upstairs. Chapter 397. After listening for a long time, Su Yusin finally got some idea of what was going on. Of course, he knew that his father had a sweetheart, but he didn't expect that sweetheart to come back. Old Master Li was tired at this point and didn't want to stay any longer. He stood up. Qinghui, a person's time in this life is actually very limited. I really hope that you know what you want and what's most important. Su Qinghui was silent. Of course, he knew that the most important thing in his life was revenge. Other than revenge, nothing else was important. Yes, that's right. He didn't regret it. Not at all. Li Qianxue looked in the direction of her daughter's departure and watched as Old Master Li returned to his room. She finally looked at Su Qinghui. Her eyes were a little cold. She didn't care that her father was still here. Her voice was full of exhaustion. Su Qinghui, if you feel that your resentment hasn't dissipated, you still want to vent your anger, then come at me. Peijian and Yusin are also your children. If you feel that you want to be with a woman now, you can mention divorce. Not only will I agree, but I can also guarantee that everything you have obtained with your ability will still be yours. But I don't want what happened today to happen again. You know I'm protective. I can tolerate anything else. But I won't watch you bully my children. After saying this, Li Qinxue didn't look at Su Qinghui. She got up and went upstairs to comfort Su Peixian. Dad! Su Qinghui didn't speak. He sat there without moving. After so many years, he realized that it was the first time he heard the word divorce from Li Qinshue's mouth. In the past, no matter what he said or did, Li Qinxue never said these two words. So as long as Xiang Kaiping came back, she was willing to divorce? Then what about the past 20 years? Dad. Su Yusin called again. Su Qinghui raised his head, as if he had just noticed Su Yusin. You're back. Yes. He didn't say that he had come back long ago. Su Yusin thought about it, and still wanted to ask more clearly. Dad, what happened to sister? What did she do? Don't you love her the most? Su Qinghui didn't speak and looked at Su Yusin. Only then did he realize that his son seemed to have grown a little taller in just half a month. This was his son, the son he had with Li Qianxue. Just like Su Qingsang, this child didn't receive all the love and care that Su Peixian did. However, this did not affect his excellence. He was number one in every subject. First in the class, first in the whole year. He also has a good personality. It was not like Su Peixian, but more like Su Qingsang. Was this really a blood relationship? Dad. Su Yusin realized that Su Qinghui was distracted again, so he couldn't ask any more questions. He remembered that his grandfather had told him that he was going to look for Hu Jinyao later. Perhaps he should go with him tomorrow. Su Qingsang didn't know that the Su family was having a huge argument at home. Xiang Kaiping slept for the whole day, and was much more energetic at night. Although he still couldn't get up, at least his face wasn't as pale as before. Su Qingsang realized that Hu Jinyao was really good at finding people after Ning Xiaomei stayed behind. Not only was she strong, but she was also very chatty. She knew Lin City very well. She even knew some of the places that had been developed in the past. She only stayed to chat with Xiang Kaiping for a while, but Xiang Kaiping was very satisfied. When Hu Jinyao came to the ward after work, Su Qingsang gave him a sincere smile of gratitude. Jinyao, you're here. Xiang Kaiping looked at Hu Jinyao with satisfaction and heartache in her eyes. You're busy at work, so you don't have to come at night. Qingsang and Xiaoning are still here. Mom, I came to see you. Hu Jinyao stood by the bed. It's good that you're awake. If you didn't wake up, I was afraid that the ward would be drowned by some people's tears. Hu Jinyao, what are you talking about? Su Qingsang glared at him. I didn't cry. Did I mention names? Hu Jinyao raised his eyebrows and looked innocent. I didn't say it was you. Why are you in such a hurry to admit it? You. Su Qingsang turned to look at Xiang Kaiping. Mom, don't believe him. Xiang Kaiping smiled and held Su Qingsang's hand. I don't believe him. I believe you. Su Qingsang blinked at Hu Jinyao. See, I'm my mother's biological daughter. Humph. Mom, you have to do something about this. Hu Jinyao looked melancholy. Your daughter is looking down on me, her husband, more and more. She didn't care about you in the first place. Xiang Kaiping looked at Hu Jinyao's pale face and added, she cares about you. Su Qingsang blushed. She really didn't expect Xiang Kaiping to say that. However, Hu Jinyao smiled with satisfaction. He looked at Su Qingsang with doting eyes. The current situation made Xiang Kaiping want to live more and more. She wanted her body to recover as soon as possible, so that she could move freely and take care of her daughter and grandchild. The atmosphere in the ward suddenly became livelier and happier, because of Hu Jinyao's arrival. Hu Jinyao also breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that Xiang Kaiping was awake. After chatting with Xiang Kaiping for a while, Hu Jinyao left Xiaoning to take care of her, and took Su Qingsang home, to put away their luggage and clothes. Xiang Kaiping asked her to go home and rest. You stay up like this every night. Even if your body can take it, my heart will ache. You should go home and rest. Come back tomorrow morning. Su Qingsang couldn't argue with the two of them, so she went home. She woke up early the next morning, found a light porridge on the internet, and sent it to the hospital. Hu Jinyao sent Su Qingsang to the hospital first, and then went to the company. If he wanted to go back to Rong City to develop, He would have to let others participate in many businesses in Lin City. He was actually very busy. He didn't expect to see someone waiting for him when he entered the company. Old Master Li. Hua Jinyao looked at Old Master Li, who was sitting on the sofa in his office. Not only him, but Su Yusin was also there. Su Yusin was clever. When he saw him, he stood up and called him brother-in-law. Hua Jinyao responded and looked at Yang Wenchang behind him. Inform them that the meeting will be postponed for half an hour. Yes. The door closed. Hua Jinyao walked to the other side of the sofa and sat down. Old Master Li, you could have called me if you needed anything. Why did you come here yourself? He glanced at Su Yusin. Yusin too. Your grandfather is old. Why don't you persuade him? It's not worth it. Old Master Li looked at the polite expression on his face. I am old, but my old arms and legs can still move. That's true. Old Master Li is old but strong. Who would dare to say that you are old? Chapter 398. Hua Jinyao pursed his lips into a straight line. He was not in a hurry to respond to the other party's words. Old Master, you're being too modest. I already said if you need anything, just let me know. I don't deserve the word beg. Old Master Li looked at Hua Jinyao with his shrewd eyes. Jinyao, you are my grandson-in-law. If you say so, I'll take it seriously. Don't. Hua Jinyao raised his hand. I'm not that lucky to be your grandson-in-law. These words were interesting. That meant that she didn't acknowledge Su Qingsang as Old Master Li's granddaughter. Old Master Li didn't look too good. Not only him, but Su Yusin also frowned. Jinyao, it's not up to you to decide. Old Master Li chuckled. No matter what, Qingsang's surname is Su. That's right. Her surname is Su, not Li. Hua Jinyao's expression was calm, but it was enough to make people angry. Old Master Li didn't know what to say. Yes. Her surname was Su. Of course, he's a member of the Su family. And then, Hua Jinyao looked up, his deep eyes sharp. The sharp side of him, that he had never shown in front of Su Qingsang, was now showing to outsiders. What do you want to say? Just say it. You already said that we are a family, so don't stand on ceremony. Old Master Li did not relax because of Hua Jinyao's words. He could tell that Hua Jinyao was not easy to deal with. It's nothing. Just a small matter. Old Master Li thought of Su Peijian and felt a little upset. Su Peijian wasn't a bad child, but she was too arrogant. She could only blame herself for spoiling her too much. As a result, Su Peijian had developed such a condescending personality. He was responsible. However, he didn't want Su Peijian to be severely punished. Jinyao, we all know about Qingsang's mother's car accident a few days ago. Hua Jinyao didn't speak. He had guessed Old Master Li's intention when he came today. Speaking of which, it is indeed our fault for not teaching our daughter well. We are also responsible. Old Master Li reflected on his actions and blamed himself. Seeing that Hua Jinyao remained unmoved, he sighed in his heart. No wonder Tianyu had been developing better and better these years. How many young people could be like Hua Jinyao? Jinyao, no matter what, we're all family. Since Qingsang's mother is fine, why don't we just forget about it? Forget it. Hua Jinyao seemed to have heard a joke. He tilted his head and looked at Old Master Li playfully. Old Master, I've always respected you, but there are some things I'm afraid I can't agree to. Jinyao, Chenghui has already taught Peijian a lesson about this. He also said that he would send Peijian to the United States so that she could calm down abroad. To the United States? Hua Jinyao smiled. That's a vacation, right? I don't think sending her away is a punishment. Jinyao, Old Master Li couldn't take it anymore. Peijian's father wants her to study abroad for a period of time. Do you still think it's a vacation? Then she's avoiding responsibility. Hua Jinyao nodded as if he suddenly understood. Yes. It turns out that in this day and age, people who do something wrong are punished as long as they are sent abroad. I've really learned something new. These words were really too unpleasant to hear. Old Master Li couldn't bear it anymore. Then what do you want? Speaking of this, Peijian is responsible for this, but she didn't do anything. She didn't want this to happen. She didn't do anything? Then I want to ask, why is instigating murder punishable? Hua Jinyao, you're not helping to solve the problem at all. Because you don't have the attitude to solve the problem. Hua Jinyao's expression turned cold. He stared at old Master Li. She should be punished for doing something wrong. What makes you think that Su Peijian can stay out of this? Brother-in-law. My sister didn't. Shut up. Hua Jinyao glared at him. Su Yusen. Don't forget that Su Qingsang is also your sister. Su Yusen didn't say anything. He lowered his head and looked at his toes. He looked a little depressed. I know, but my sister Su Peijian really knows that she was wrong. She knows that she was wrong? Go to prison and admit your mistake. Hua Jinyao, don't go too far. Old Master Li couldn't bear to listen anymore. This was an accident. Peijian didn't do this. She also blames herself for this result and regrets it. Can't you? I can't. Hua Jinyao's expression was firm, and his eyes were cold. Just like your bottom line is your family, my bottom line is also my family. Although Xiang Kaiping was not Hua Jinyao's direct family member, she was now Hua Jinyao's mother-in-law, so she was his family. Su Peijian dared to offend Xiang Kaiping, so she had to pay the price. The atmosphere was tense for a moment. Old Master Li took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. It was really difficult to stay calm like this. Hua Jinyao, then what do you want? Hua Jinyao didn't speak. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the two people in front of him. Old Master Li, you may not know one thing. What? This is not the first time Su Peijian has gotten into trouble. What? Not only Old Master Li, but even Su Yusen's eyes widened. Hua Jinyao thought for a moment, and told them about the husband of the pregnant woman, who jumped off the building last time. He didn't add fuel to the fire, and there was no need. After a few words he looked at Old Master Li. You know now, right? This is not the first time Su Peijian has targeted Qingsang, nor did she do anything bad. In fact, I gave her a chance. I also told Dad to keep an eye on Su Peijian. What did Dad say to me at that time? He said that he promised that nothing like this would happen again. However, it seems that not long after he promised, something like this happened again. Do you think I will let it go just like that? Old Master Li and Su Yusen didn't know about this. It was the first time they heard about it today. They looked at each other and stared at Hua Jinyao with their eyes wide open. They almost couldn't believe that Su Peijian was like this. This may be a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Hua Jinyao nodded. I'm sorry. I still have evidence that she instigated Lu Xiangyu's husband to hit Qingsang last time. Hua Jinyao never fought a battle. He was not confident of winning. Since he had made up his mind, he naturally had to make a fatal move. Old Master Li was speechless. He really didn't expect Su Peijian to make a mistake for the second time. After all, he had watched Su Peijian grow up. Chapter 399. Brother-in-law, what do you want now? Compared with Old Master Li's shock, Su Yusen was much calmer. Do you want my sister to apologize to Sister Qingsang's mother? Su Peijian wouldn't be able to take it if Su Peijian lost face like this. Hua Jinyao looked at Su Yusen with admiration. Su Yusen was so calm at such a young age. He would be a great man in the future. It was a pity that such a good boy was Su Peijian's younger brother. What a waste. Su Peijian already apologized last time, but it didn't work. So I don't need her to apologize. Hua Jinyao looked at Old Master Li and Su Yusen's faces and added, I want her to go to jail. Hua Jinyao. Old Master Li's voice was trembling. You? She will turn herself in and say that she encouraged Lu Xiangyu's husband to hurt Qingsang. I've asked. This kind of crime won't last long. She'll be out in about 3 months. Hua Jinyao. Old Master Li's face turned green. Li Yongfeng's granddaughter was going to jail? Brother-in-law. Su Yusen also felt that the punishment was too much. Hua Jinyao said in a tone that was not negotiable. 3 months is my bottom line. As long as Su Peijian turns herself in, I promise that I won't do anything but lock her up for 3 months. He didn't finish his words, but the meaning was clear. If Su Peijian didn't turn herself in and stay in jail for 3 months, then Hua Jinyao would do it himself. Old Master Li and Su Yusen didn't expect Hua Jinyao to be so cruel. They looked at each other and wanted to say something, but they knew it was useless to say anything at this time. Hua Jinyao didn't stand on ceremony. After saying what he wanted, He picked up the documents and went to the meeting. Before he left, he didn't forget to annoy them. Old Masterly, what about me? My patience is limited, so Su Peijian had better turn herself in as soon as possible. Otherwise, I can't guarantee how long she will be locked up if I come forward to sue her. Old Master Li's face turned from green to white, and then from white to green. He looked lethargic with an emaciated face. Su Yusin looked at Hu Jinyao's closed office door, thought for a moment, and helped Old Master Li up. Shall we go? Leave? Old Master Li didn't expect to be so embarrassed. How? Are you going to let your sister go to jail? But it's useless even if you beg him now. Although Su Yusin hadn't interacted much with Hu Jinyao, he could tell that Hu Jinyao wasn't someone who would easily change his mind. Are you going to watch your sister go to jail? If that really happened, the Li family and the Su family would become the laughingstock of Lin City. Su Yusin glanced at Old Master Li. Grandpa, why are you so obsessed? As you can see by now, it's useless to go to Hu Jinyao. Meeting Old Master Li's puzzled gaze, Su Yusin added, if you really don't want sister to go to jail, I'm afraid you'll have to look for Sister Qingsang. Old Master Li was stunned for a moment. He looked at Su Yusin and suddenly understood. Su Qingsang brought the porridge to Xiang Kaiping. In fact, she couldn't drink much at the moment. After drinking half a bowl, he said he couldn't drink anymore. Xiao Ning cleverly cleaned up the bowl, and Su Qingsang chatted with Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping had recovered quite well that day. Seeing that Su Qingsang had been with her the whole time, and had been busy, she felt really bad. Why did she feel that she hadn't helped her daughter much since she adopted her? Instead, it was her daughter who had been worrying about her? Qingsang, talk to the leaders of your institute. You can go to work tomorrow. Mom, don't you like me to accompany you? I like it. But, Xiang Saiping's face was pale. But it's too much of a waste of your time. It's okay, Mom. I've already told the leader. I'll accompany you for the next few days. We'll talk about going to work in a few days. Although the critical period had passed, Xiang Kaiping was still very weak. Su Qingsang wanted to stay with her for a few more days. Okay then. Su Qingsang wanted to say something else, but her phone suddenly rang. Su Qingsang didn't expect the person to be Su Yusin. Not only Su Yusin, but Old Master Li was also there. When she saw Su Yusin in the corridor outside the hospital, she couldn't hide the surprise on her face. Yusin? She saw Su Yusin first, then Old Master Li. Old Master Li. Old Master Li looked at Su Qingsang. No matter how biased he was, he had to admit that Su Qingsang was much more sensible than Su Peijian. Su Peijian didn't seem like an older sister, but more like a younger sister. Yusin, why are you here? Su Qingsang thought about the gift on the dressing table at home. She hadn't given Su Yusin the gift on the dressing table. Sister, this is a gift for Auntie. Su Yusin was carrying some high-end nutrition and tonics in his hand. They didn't look cheap. Su Qingsang wasn't in a hurry to take them. Instead, she looked at Old Master Li. Sister, you know that it's not convenient for us to go in. Why don't you bring them in? Thank you. Su Qingsang didn't refuse the gift. She took the gift box from the man's hand. Thank you. She didn't rush to go in. Instead, she looked at Su Yusin and said, You still have something to talk to me about, right? Although she didn't know what it was, she could more or less guess. Yes, but you should bring the things in first. We'll talk when you come out later. Su Yusin didn't think too much about it. He just wanted to give a generous gift. He didn't expect to buy so much. Su Qingsang glanced at him and didn't ask any more questions. She carried the things into the door. She told Xiao Ning to take good care of Xiang Kaiping before coming out again. What's the matter? Say it. Sister. Su Yusin looked around. This was really not a good place to chat. Let's find a place. Su Qingsang nodded and took Su Yusin to the lawn outside the hospital. There were 2 benches there. Old Master Li, please sit. Su Qingsang was still respectful to Old Master Li. Old Master Li felt a little embarrassed. He had just begged Hu Jinyao today, and now he came to beg Su Qingsang. He didn't know if Su Qingsang would agree, or if she would be on Hu Jinyao's side. Sister, I'll tell you the truth. Su Yusin told her about their visit to Hu Jingyao today. He skipped the part about Lu Xiangyu's husband, thinking that Su Qingseng knew about it. He directly said that Hu Jingyao wanted to put Su Peijian in jail. Su Qingseng's eyes widened. Old Master Li and Su Yusin saw her shocked expression. Both of them knew that Su Qingseng didn't know about it at all. It was good that she didn't know. Old Master Li breathed a sigh of relief. He glanced at Su Yusin. Chapter 400. The lawn of the hospital was very quiet. Su Yusin's voice was very soft, but it was very clear. Sister. We all know that Sister Peijian has gone too far this time. Daddy is going to send her away now. Brother-in-law is going to put her in jail again. Sis, she has already been punished and knows that she was wrong. Can we just let it go? Sister. You're also a member of the Su family. We're bound together for good or bad. If Sister Peijian really goes to jail, the reputation of the Su family will be ruined. We will become the joke of Lin City. Sister. I promise you this is the last time. If Sister Peijian does anything to hurt you or Auntie again, I won't forgive her no matter what you say. Sister, let's just forget about this, okay? Su Qingseng listened to Su Yusin's words, and the shock in her eyes slowly faded. She stood there for a long time without saying a word. Half an hour later, Su Qingseng sent Su Yusin and Old Master Li off and returned to the ward. When it was almost time, Hu Jingyao asked someone to bring lunch. Su Qingseng had lost her appetite because of Su Yusin and Old Master Li, but he forced himself to eat some. Xiang Kaiping immediately noticed that Su Qingseng didn't look too good. Qingseng, are you tired from taking care of me? Take a break if you're too tired. Mom, what are you talking about? I'm not tired. Su Qingseng thought about Old Master Li's arrival and Su Yusin's words. Actually, she didn't want to get involved in this matter. Su Peijian hurting Xiang Kaiping made her even angrier than hurting herself. She really wanted to teach Su Peijian a lesson. So what if she went to jail? It was just a few months. But what's that? Is it because you don't come to work and the leader is unhappy? Mom. Su Qingseng thought for a moment and decided to tell Xiang Kaiping the truth. She gestured for Xiao Ning to go out for a while and sat down in front of the bed again. Mom, there's something I didn't want to tell you, but I think I should ask your opinion. Su Qingseng told him about Su Yusin and Old Master Li's visit. He also told them about Hu Jingyao's plan to punish Su Peijian. In fact, this was quite a severe punishment for Su Peijian. She was such a prideful person, and she was also a proud daughter of heaven. How could she bear to be locked up for a few months like this? Although Su Qingseng didn't sympathize with her, she felt that this was indeed a punishment. That's how it is. I didn't agree, nor did I agree. I don't think I have a say in this matter. Xiang Kaiping didn't say anything. She really didn't like Su Peijian. Not only did he not like it, he hated it. Very annoying. She also wanted to teach Su Peijian a lesson, but going to jail. Is this Jinyao's idea? Yes. Su Qingseng nodded. Hu Jingyao has to put her in jail. That's why Su Yusin came to me. Are you close to Su Yusin? Yes. He's not like Su Peijian. He's a nice guy. Su Qingseng thought for a moment then added. In fact, Old Master Li is a nice guy too. Although he doesn't value me, he hasn't made things difficult for me over the years. I have done all the necessary etiquette. Xiang Kaiping didn't say anything. She could tell that Su Qingseng didn't have feelings for Su Peijian, but she was willing to care about Su Yusin and Old Master Li. Speaking of which, my fall has nothing to do with her. If I didn't fall over there, I wouldn't have been hit by the car. Mom. Su Qingseng held her hand. You don't have to worry about me. You just have to worry about yourself. If you feel that you have to vent your anger, then let Su Peijian go to jail. It doesn't matter. Forget it. Xiang Kaiping was still in a bad mood, but she didn't continue to dwell on this matter. I'm not an unforgiving person. Since Su Qinghui sent her abroad, then send her away. As for going to jail, forget it. Mom, you've been wronged. I'm fine. It's been so many years. What haven't I suffered? I just feel sorry for you. Mom. Su Qingseng didn't like the Su family, and she didn't like the Li family. If possible, it would be best if they didn't interact. but the current situation made it impossible for them to not interact. So she really couldn't talk about such a thing. At night, Su Qingseng left Xiao Ning in the hospital to take care of Xiang Kaiping. She went home with Hu Jinniao and told him about old Master Li's visit. "You're soft-hearted?" "A little." Su Qingseng nodded. "I don't have a deep grudge against Su Peixian. It's just a small conflict. I think it's too heavy a punishment for her to go to jail." Hu Jinniao looked at the hesitation on her face, picked her up, and put her on his lap. "You're too soft-hearted." According to him, he wanted to teach Su Peixian a lesson. He wanted to let her know next time that she had to pay the price for doing whatever she wanted. However, Su Qingseng was soft-hearted, and so was Xiang Kaiping. "Not really. In fact, the Su family has neglected and ignored me for so many years. But in other aspects, they have not treated me badly. At the very least, there aren't many illegitimate daughters in Shaolin City who are raised in this family. At least she grew up safely. At least she received higher education. At least she was still here. Take her home? That might not be for her own good." Hu Jinniao was quite mean. "Why don't you say that your father did it to anger Li Qianxue?" Su Qingseng glanced at him. "Do you have to be so direct?" "I've always been direct." As Hu Jinniao spoke, she turned around to face him. "Just like how I'm direct to you now." The hint in his words was too obvious. Su Qingseng was a little embarrassed. "Stop it. I haven't showered yet." "That's good. Let's shower together." As Hu Jinniao spoke, he picked her up. He took her in the direction of the bathroom. Su Qingseng didn't want to fall, so she could only put her arms around his neck. "Hu Jinniao, huh? Don't worry, I'll wash you very clean." Who told him that? Su Qingseng glared at him. She wanted to say that they should just have a child without protection, but she didn't say that in the end. She should wait a little longer. Wait for her heart to calm down a little more. Wait for her to be more certain. "Don't worry. I know you're very tired. Just once." The hint in Hu Jinniao's words was too strong. Su Qingseng turned her face away, didn't want to listen, and finally buried her face in his chest. "Hu Jinniao." "Yes. It's okay. It was okay even if it was more than once." She was actually willing. Hu Jinniao understood. His eyes became very eager for a moment, and he strode into the bathroom with her in his arms. Su Qingseng took care of Xiang Kaiping for a few days. After her body recovered a little, and her spirit was much better, she finally returned to the department to work. On the first day of work, 2 people who were seriously injured in a car accident came, and one of them was a pregnant woman. She was 8.5 months pregnant, and the situation was very dangerous. Su Qingseng prepared for the surgery with Chief Chun. Chapter 401. The pregnant woman is hemorrhaging. She needs typo blood. "I need typo blood." After the doctor finished speaking to his assistant, one of the nurses went to get the blood. Su Qingseng couldn't care less about anything else. She couldn't afford to be distracted for even a second on the operating table. Not only did the pregnant woman hurt her stomach, but her chest was also injured. The atmosphere in the operating theater was very tense. The surgeon was performing a thoracotomy for the pregnant woman, while the obstetrician was performing a cesarean section for the pregnant woman. The 2 surgeries were carried out at the same time, but because they had cooperated many times, they were orderly. Su Qingseng and Director Chen had worked together many times, and had a tacit understanding. More than an hour later, the cesarean section was over. Mother and daughter were safe. At the same time, the thoracic surgery was also over. The pregnant woman was pushed to the intensive care unit, and the newborn was sent to the infant observation room. Su Qingseng was in charge of writing the surgical records. Huang Jie, the nurse, still had some lingering fears. It was really dangerous. When the pregnant woman went into shock just now, I thought we couldn't save her. Isn't that so? Another nurse, Cheng Siyu, said, "There was so much blood, and the blood transfusion cost 1,000 cc. It's really a miracle that he could be saved." Yes, such a large amount of blood loss. Su Qingseng glanced at them, gossiping. Huang Jie made a zipping motion with her mouth, then turned around and left quickly. Su Qingseng glanced at the medical record, and continued to write the rest of the surgical records. Not long after, the newborn's physical examination was sent over. Su Qingseng glanced at them. After confirming that there were no problems, she backed up all the records and saved them. After that, Su Qingseng went to keep Xiang Kaiping company. Are you exhausted? Xiang Kaiping's waist injury hadn't healed yet, so she couldn't move for the time being. However, the bed could already be shaken up, and with the help of the caregiver, she could eat by herself in a half-sitting position. I'm not tired. Su Qingseng looked at Xiang Kaiping and opened the lunchbox. Hua Jinyao had asked Yang Wenchang to go to Chaowen Courtyard to bring it over. It had been boiled until it was very fragrant. It was especially suitable for patients. Xiaoning was very perceptive. She took the bowl and chopsticks and set them aside. If you have to work, don't come over. Xiang Kaiping felt a little uncomfortable watching her daughter take care of her. Mom, look at you. I have to eat at work too. Eat more. Look at you. You've lost weight. Nonsense. Su Qingsong's eyes widened. Do you see how thin I am? During this period of time, all the nourishing soup that you couldn't eat went into my stomach. I've basically gained weight. It's good to be fatter. Xiang Kaiping looked at her daughter and felt that she was too skinny. It's better for girls to be chubbier. No way. Su Qingseng was quite satisfied with her current figure. If I get any fatter, Hua Jinyao might not want me anymore. I heard it. Don't accuse me wrongly. Even if you were twice as fat, I don't dare to abandon you. Hearing Hua Jinyao's clear male voice, Su Qingseng stood up abruptly and turned around. Why are you here? I have an appointment with a client who is nearby. I'll come over once I'm done. Hua Jinyao said it casually, but in fact he knew that Su Qingseng was going back to work today, so he wanted to come and see her. Have you eaten? If not, let's eat together. Okay. Hua Jinyao stepped forward and looked at the dishes in front of him. Not only did he consider Xiang Kaiping's mood, but he also considered Su Qingsong's taste. Not bad. Did Wenchang bring the food here? Yang Wenchang wasn't supposed to bring food, but Hua Jinyao was a little worried about letting someone else do it. Yes. Su Qingseng nodded. You're a good assistant. Hua Jinyao glanced at her. If you know how much his annual salary is, you'll think he's a good assistant. How much? Su Qingseng asked casually. Hua Jinyao said a number. Su Qingsong's eyes widened. That much? Yes. Wenchang is good at everything. He could handle a lot of things very well. He was worth the salary. Such a high salary, Su Qingseng said casually. I really have no future as a doctor. I might as well be your assistant. Hua Jinyao smiled. He didn't care that there were other people in the ward, and rubbed the top of her head. How can I bear to let you suffer like that? You should just focus on being Mrs. Hua. Mr. and Mrs. Hua have such a good relationship. Xiaoning couldn't help but interrupt. Xiang Kaiping smiled. It's good that they have a good relationship. I'm still waiting to have a grandchild. Su Qingseng felt a little uncomfortable. She glanced at Hua Jinyao, afraid that he would give her away. Definitely. Hua Jinyao put his arm around Su Qingsong's shoulder as if nothing had happened. It will happen sooner or later. Mom, don't worry. Qingseng and I will definitely have 2 children in our lifetime. When we have a pair of twins, you'll be too busy every day. That's good. I'll take it seriously. Xiang Kaiping was amused. If you don't have twins, you'll have to compensate me. What are you talking about? Su Qingseng couldn't listen to it anymore. She couldn't decide how many children they had. What do you want if we only have one? Nothing. Hua Jinyao put his arm around her waist and said, as long as you gave birth to him. As long as it's your child, not to mention one. Even if you give birth to a ball, I'll hold it in my hand and love it dearly. Screw you. You're the one who gives birth to a ball. Su Qingseng scolded him, only to realize that she was scolding herself. She turned her face away and ignored this guy. Xiang Kaiping and Xiaoning laughed so hard that their stomachs hurt. Especially Xiang Kaiping. I say, Jinyao, my wound hasn't healed yet. You guys are teasing me like this. My wound is going to split open. Mom, are you okay? Su Qingseng suddenly became nervous. Xiang Kaiping waved her hand. I'm fine. I just laughed a little too hard. Su Qingseng glared at Hu Jingyao again. It was all his fault. Hu Jingyao looked innocent and raised his hands in surrender. It's all my fault, okay? My dear wife. Su Qingseng used the excuse of scooping rice to get up and ignored him. Hu Jingyao took a step forward and looked at Xiang Kaiping. Mother, look, Qingseng is angry again. Hurry up and talk to her. I won't. Xiang Kaiping deliberately put on a cold face. If you're wrong, you'll be punished. I won't help you persuade her. Then tell me how to punish her, mother. Hu Jingyao was quite casual. Xiang Kaiping looked at the food in front of her. It was definitely more than enough for 4 people. Then I'll punish you to finish all the food. Okay. Hu Jingyao made a gesture. Yes, mother. Xiang Kaiping couldn't help but be amused by him again. For a moment, the atmosphere in the ward was extremely happy. Su Qingseng looked at Hu Jingyao. She felt that her heart was beating uncontrollably. Chapter 402. When her heart beat, she felt every cell and every drop of blood in her body rising and falling for this man named Hu Jingyao. She found that she liked Hu Jingyao more and more. She found that she was falling in love with Hu Jingyao. How could there be such a good man? It wasn't because of his looks or his family background. It was because of his kindness. He protected her and doted on her, including her family. He took good care of Xiang Saiping's 3 meals. For each meal, he asked the nutritionist and the doctor what dishes and soups were suitable for the patient. Also, Xiang Saiping's hospitalization was very boring. After all, she was lying in bed and couldn't do anything else. However, Hu Jingyao came to see her whenever he had time. Not only did he visit her, but he also tried his best to make Xiang Kaiping happy. Because of them, Xiang Kaiping didn't feel uncomfortable at all in the hospital. Instead, she was in a good mood. And he did all this because Xiang Kaiping was his mother. That was why he loved her, and even took care of her mother so well. More importantly, Hu Jingyao had done everything because he wanted to, and he had done it. What's wrong? Is the soup not good? Hu Jingyao saw Su Qingseng holding a bowl of soup without drinking, and looked at her with some confusion. It's okay. It's delicious, but it's a little hot. Is it hot? It had been so long since she packed it from Chaowen Courtyard. It shouldn't be hot anymore, right? It's not hot now. Su Qingseng smiled. Let's eat. After eating, Xiao Ning went to clean up. Su Qingseng and Hu Jingyao talked to Xiang Kaiping for a while. Xiang Kaiping was sleepy and wanted to sleep. After she fell asleep, Su Qingseng pulled Hu Jingyao up and led him outside. Are you going back to the company now? Yes. Hu Jingyao nodded. I have 2 meetings in the afternoon. Su Qingseng didn't ask anymore. She didn't know much about business anyway. However, she said, I see that you haven't had a good rest these days. Why don't you sleep at home and 2 days on the weekend? Hu Jingyao stopped, leaned over and glanced at her. Do you feel sorry for me? Su Qingseng's face was a little hot. She looked away. Who feels sorry for you? I feel sorry for myself. You come here every day. I'm annoyed. Annoy me? I wonder whose eyes lit up when they saw me. You're mistaken. Su Qingseng refused to admit it. My eyes light up when I see who's coming, including Su Qinghui. He had heard that Su Qinghui had come twice, but had been turned away by Su Qingseng. Xiang Kaiping was nowhere to be seen. Hearing that name, Su Qingseng's expression changed. Yes, including him. I have to be extra careful when I see him. I don't want him to have a chance to see my mother. I find that you hate him now. I can't say that. My mother just doesn't want to see him. No matter how bad Su Qinghui was, he was still her father. She still had basic respect for him. Hu Jingyao didn't say anything. He looked at Su Qingseng and thought of something else. Grandpa called me. Huh. Old Master Hua. He asked me to take you back to Rong City for the new year. Hu Jingyao looked at Su Qingseng and said, he just said so. And I told him. I said that you can't leave Lin City now. I'm afraid it's not convenient for you to go back for the new year. Su Qingseng pursed her lips into a straight line and looked at Hu Jingyao. She couldn't be as calm as he was. Hu Jingyao, I'm afraid Grandpa is unhappy. Why would he be? Old Master Hua was the most open-minded. He knows about your mother's car accident and wants you to take good care of her. Don't think about anything else. Okay. Su Qingseng had dealt with old Master Hua before and knew that he was the kindest old man. But your parents must be unhappy, right? You don't have to worry about my parents. Hua Jinyao looked at her. He didn't want to lie to her. My parents are unhappy, but it has nothing to do with us. Just ignore them. But I might have to go back to Rong City in a couple of days. It was close to the end of the year. In fact, he had a lot of things to do in Rong City. If it weren't for Xiang Saiping's accident, he would have flown there long ago. Will you be gone for long? Su Qingseng knew that he wouldn't come back to Lin City so soon. There are a lot of things to do. When I'm done, it might be the new year. I'll definitely have to spend time with Grandpa. Su Qingseng fell silent. They had just been married for a year, but they couldn't spend the new year together. Why don't I ask the doctor if your mother can move now? Don't ask. Su Qingseng was a doctor herself. My mother's current condition is not suitable for flying at all. Even if we fly there, we'll have to change hospitals and find new doctors. She'll have to adapt again. Although it's not troublesome for you to deal with these things, I think it's better not to. Hua Jinyao looked at her troubled face and couldn't help but laugh. Then stay. I'll try to come back on New Year's Day. I'll spend the new year with you. Don't. Su Qingseng really didn't want to do that. Actually, I was assigned to work last year and spent the new year in the hospital. It's okay. She said it calmly, but Hua Jinyao felt a little sorry for her. He thought about the past years. Even if she didn't spend the new year in the hospital, she must have had a hard time in a place like the Su family. He had decided to solve this problem as soon as possible. Then, he would come back to spend the new year with Su Qingseng. We'll talk about it when the time comes. There were still more than 10 days before the new year. Maybe Xiang Kaiping could be discharged by then? Okay. After sending Hua Jinyao off, Su Qingseng went back to the ward to check on Xiang Kaiping and found that she was still sleeping. She went downstairs to her own department. She didn't expect to see a few people gathered in the corridor outside the maternity ward as soon as she went downstairs. One of the men looked to be in his 30s. He was tall and thin. At that moment, he was holding Huang Jie's hand and wouldn't let go. What are you doing? Su Qingseng quickly stepped forward and stood in front of Huang Jie. She asked the man to let go of his hand. This is a hospital. Is it a place for you to make trouble? Let go. No. If you don't compensate me for my child today, I won't. I won't F** King let go. Compensate for what child? What child? Su Qingseng turned to look at Huang Jie. Her hand was being held by the man. Her face was distorted by the pain. Dr. Su, you're here at the right time. Explain to this family member. Explain what? He's the husband of the pregnant woman who was sent here in the car accident this morning. He just looked at the test results and insisted that we carried his child. What's going on? Explain it clearly. Chapter 403. The man grabbed Huang Jie's hand and refused to let go. Tell me what you're talking about. Tell me clearly. My wife is type O blood. I'm type AB blood. Whose is this type A child's? Whose is it? Huh? The man was very angry, and several family members behind him also spoke up. Your hospital is too unreasonable. The child was switched at birth? Yes. Where's the child? Where is it? No wonder people say that doctors nowadays are becoming more and more immoral. It's really immoral. Isn't it immoral? They don't even know who this child belongs to? Why does he have to stay in the observation room? Is there something wrong with it? I think this hospital deliberately threw this kind of problematic child to us, and then gave our healthy child to someone else. But that's it. It's too easy for the doctors and nurses in the hospital to steal the child. The group of people spoke one after another, making Su Qingseng's head hurt. Shut up. Stop arguing. Su Qingseng glared at the group of people in front of her, took 2 steps forward, and forcefully pushed the man's hand away. She pulled Huang Jie behind her. Have you guys had enough? If you have, can you be quiet for a while and listen to me? What do you want to say? What do you have to say? The man looked angry. Where is our child? Tell me. Sir, you just said that your wife is type O blood, and you are type AB blood. Now your child is type A. Is that right? When Su Qingsang said this, a very vague thought flashed through her mind. But she didn't have time to think about the current situation. Yes, the tall, thin man was still angry when he said this. He glared at Su Qingsang and said, "Can you tell me now? Hand over my child." "Sir, calm down. No one stole your child. Your child is still fine." Su Qingsang took out her phone as she spoke. "Let me tell you why your child is type A," Wang Yao said. Su Qingsang's fingers moved quickly. She opened the search page and faced the tall, thin man. "Look carefully. Type O blood is a recessive blood type. When it combined with type AB blood, the child born would not be type AB blood. It couldn't be type O either. They could only be type A or type B. Therefore, your son's blood type A is not a problem at all." Nonsense. The lanky man did not believe him. How could there be such a thing? I've only heard of people who take their blood type after their father or mother. I've never heard of someone with a different blood type. What do you mean by following others? That was up to you. Because type O was a recessive blood type. After the two of you get together, your AB blood type can only be passed on to your child as A or B. As for what you said about blood type coming from your parents, V had published that Mo Wenwei had type B blood, but she might give birth to type O blood. Is it because the child is type O that it's not your child? The tall and slender man frowned. Su Qingsang showed him the screen of her phone. "Sir, you can find out about this kind of thing if you look it up on the internet. There's no way we can fake it. If you really don't believe me, you can do a paternity test. Let's see if we took your son from your wife's womb." Su Qingsang's words made Huang Jie glance at her. She thought that Dr. Su was really smart. Even if the child wasn't the man's, it must at least be his wife's. The tall and slender man finished reading the genetic chart. He still had a look of disbelief on his face. How could there be such a thing? Didn't they say that blood type comes from the parents? It's true that blood type comes from the parents. But blood type can also be changed during heredity. You can also see if a person with type A blood type and a person with type B. The children born could be AB, O or AB of any of these. Because heredity is a very complicated system, you can't just rely on a blood type to say that your child isn't yours. The tall, skinny man finally stopped after hearing Su Qingsang's words. "Doctor, I'm sorry. I don't read much. I didn't know about this." "Sir, you're welcome. It has nothing to do with how much you read. After all, most people don't pay attention to their own blood type." Yes. I'm not in a hurry." The tall and slender man's smile was a little awkward. "Then is my child okay? Why do you think he was sent to the observation room? Your wife had a lot of bleeding when she had a car accident. Although the child wasn't obviously affected, we can observe him. It's also a safeguard for him. You can also rest assured." "Thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctor." The tall and slender man also calmed down. After thanking Huang Jie and apologizing again, he went to see the child. As he walked, he said that the hospital was really good, and that the service was so good. Huang Jie's eyes widened. "Dr. Su, look at these people. All right. Sometimes the patient's family is a little anxious. Let's understand." Su Qingsang patted her on the shoulder. "All right, are you okay? I saw him holding your hand just now. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. Fortunately, you came in time. You could explain if I didn't come. That's different. We're nurses. You're a doctor." There was a difference between what a doctor said and what a nurse said. Su Qingsang smiled. "All right. Go back to your work. I'll go see the pregnant woman later." "Okay." The group of people dispersed. Su Qingsang was about to put her phone back into her pocket when her eyes fell on the screen. Suddenly she froze. She suddenly stood in the corridor and didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the hereditary pattern chart on the screen. She felt as if her heart was being squeezed by a hand. When type O and AB people combined, they would give birth to type A or B blood. But it could never be type AB blood. For example, a person with type AB blood could not give birth to a child with type O blood. A person with type O blood could not give birth to a child with type AB blood. Xiang Kaiping was type O blood, and she was type AB blood. What did this mean? She was not Xiang Kaiping's daughter at all. Su Qingsang stood there without moving. Her eyes were fixed on the phone screen. as if she was staring at it to find an answer. There were people passing by. Some people even called her name and greeted her. But Su Qingsang didn't hear them. She just stared at the words typo blood. The phone screen suddenly jumped. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. Seeing that it was Shi Mengwan's number, she picked it up. Qingsang, are you in the hospital? Yes. Su Qingsang came back to her senses. Hearing Shi Mengwan's familiar voice, her eyes finally focused. What's wrong? I'm at the door of your office. I didn't see you. Where are you? The moment Su Qingsang looked up, she saw Shi Mengwan at the other end of the corridor. Chapter 404. She was out of breath. She unbuttoned 2 buttons and patted Su Qingsang on the shoulder. You're not a good friend. What's wrong? Su Qingsang blinked. She hadn't come back to her senses yet. You really don't treat me as a friend. Shi Mengwan punched her. We're so familiar with each other. You didn't even tell me that Auntie had a car accident? Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment and suddenly reacted. Sorry, I was too busy before. I didn't notice. If I hadn't come to see you on a whim today, would you still have planned to hide it from me? Shi Mengwan heard that Su Qingsang was going on an exchange program for half a month. She should be back by then, but she didn't answer her call in the morning. She happened to be nearby in the afternoon, so she came over. She didn't expect to hear from someone in Su Qingsang's department that she might have gone to see her mother. She asked and found out that Xiang Kaiping had a car accident. Let's go. Since we're here, I'll go see Auntie. Let's go. Xiang Kaiping might have woken up at this time. She couldn't sleep well after her lumbar spine was injured, but she couldn't take too many painkillers. So she always slept and woke up. You really don't treat me as a friend. Shi Mengwan followed behind Su Qingsang with a bit of anger on her face. In the past, Su Qingsang would have comforted her and told her that she didn't do it on purpose. But she wasn't in the mood today. Her mind was a little confused. She took Shi Mengwan to Xiang Kaiping's ward. She looked at Xiang Kaiping with a rather complicated expression. She had already woken up and was quite surprised to see Shi Mengwan. Xiang Kaiping and Xiao Ning didn't notice her expression. Xiang Kaiping was busy chatting with Shi Mengwan. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping and thought, does she know that I'm not her daughter? No, she definitely doesn't know. She was still wearing the jade pendant that Xiang Kaiping gave her. The jade was warm and had become as hot as her body temperature. She thought of how Xiang Kaiping had a conflict with Su Peijian for her. She even slapped Su Peijian for her. She remembered the sweater that Xiang Kaiping had knitted for her. She had seen it on the first day she came home. It was placed on the sofa in the living room. At that time, Xiang Kaiping must have been waiting for her to come back and let her wear it. He just didn't expect that when he came back, she was already in the hospital. All the signs showed that Xiang Kaiping really thought that she was her daughter. But why wasn't she? The blood type couldn't be fake, so who was she? Qingsang? Xiang Kaiping's voice brought her back to reality. The smile on her face was a little stiff. Mom. This time the word mother was a little stiffer than usual, but no one could tell. Why are you daydreaming? Mengwan is talking to you. Qingsang, what's wrong? Shi Mengwan looked at Su Qingsang, seemingly confused by her absent-mindedness. Nothing. I just remembered that I have an operation in the afternoon. I'm asking you. Fortunately, Shi Mengwan wasn't angry. Auntie, how long are you going to stay here? How long will it take to recover? Did the doctor say anything? Stay in the hospital for at least a month. Let's see how he recovers in a month. You don't have to stay in the hospital. You can just come to the hospital for rehabilitation. So long? Shi Mengwan's eyes widened. Doesn't that mean I'll be in the hospital during the new year? That can't be helped. It's a little serious. Who would want to spend the new year in the hospital if they could? Auntie, I'll come and keep you company then. No need. Xiang Kaiping hurriedly stopped her. It's not auspicious to come to the hospital during the new year. It's the same to come after the new year. I'm fine. Auntie, you don't have to be so polite with me. Qingsang's mother is my mother. Don't worry. I'll definitely come and keep you company. Xiang Kaiping was very embarrassed. However, she didn't continue being polite. With Shi Mengwan around, Xiang Kaiping waved Su Qingseng to hurry to work. Su Qingseng looked at Xiang Kaiping with a complicated expression. Finally she nodded, said goodbye to Shi Mingwan and left. Su Qingseng really didn't lie. There were 2 minor operations in the afternoon, and they wouldn't take long. They weren't difficult operations. She could still concentrate when she was working, but after she stopped what she was doing, she couldn't stop thinking about her relationship with Xiang Kaiping. She thought for a long time, but couldn't think of a reason. In the end, she went to the hematology department to do another blood type test. Dr. Su, why did you do a blood test? Didn't you do it during the physical examination? Facing the hematology colleague's question, Su Qingseng smiled and didn't rush to answer. For her, this question was really difficult to answer. Nothing, I just want to check. The colleague didn't ask any more questions. After helping Su Qingseng with the examination, he gave her the results. It didn't take long to check her blood type, and the results would be known in a few minutes. The blood type was clearly written on it. Her blood type was AB. As soon as Hu Jinyao entered the hospital today, he sensitively noticed that Su Qingseng's mood wasn't quite right. Although she was joking with Xiang Kaiping and making her happy, he could see that Su Qingseng's smile didn't end there. What happened? Hu Jinyao thought of the news he had received. Su Qinghui also sent Su Peijian to the United States. Li Qianxue was furious, and in the end, she went on a trip in a rage. Coincidentally, Su Yusin was also on vacation, and she took her son with her, so she wasn't in Lin City these days. In other words, it couldn't be the Su family who provoked Su Qingseng, but that might not be the case. Could it be something related to work? Hu Jinyao wasn't in a hurry to ask. He believed that Su Qingseng would tell him when they got home. Now they were all staying at home at night. This was strongly requested by Xiang Kaiping. He said that they had to work during the day, and it would be bad if they didn't rest well at night. Xiao Ning stayed in the hospital to take care of Xiang Kaiping. She was used to being a nurse. He had taken care of many people who were more difficult to serve than Xiang Kaiping, so there was nothing to worry about. As expected, Hu Jinyao's intuition was extremely accurate. Su Qingseng fell silent as soon as she got into the car. She didn't say a word, and kept her eyes on the road in front of her. Under the illumination of the street lights, she looked a little lost, a little conflicted, and a little down that he couldn't see clearly. Wife. Are you okay? I'm fine. What could have happened to me? She had just suddenly discovered something. Hu Jinyao frowned slightly. He didn't like Su Qingseng's tone. However, he didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he sped up a little. The car stopped in front of Su Qingseng's apartment. Su Qingseng got out of the car almost as soon as it stopped. Hu Jinyao looked at her back, and quickly got out of the car. Wife, are you okay? I said I'm fine. Don't worry about me now. Chapter 405. The question of whose daughter she was had haunted her for years. Later, when Xiang Kaiping appeared, she thought that this problem was gone. But he didn't expect this problem to come again. Who is she? Whose child is it? Whose daughter? Honey. Hu Jinyao took her hand, and she instinctively wanted to break free. When she realized that she couldn't break free, she was a little annoyed. Let me go. Something was wrong. Something was really wrong. Honey. Hu Jinyao didn't let go of her. Instead, he pulled her into his arms and asked, What's wrong with you? Let go of me. I can't think with you like this. Then don't think. Hu Jinyao hugged her tightly. Don't think. Look at me. Look into my eyes. Hu Jinyao stared at her. What happened? Tell me. Su Qingseng looked at his handsome face. His deep-set features and eyes that were as bright as the stars were staring straight at her. Her lips moved, but in the end, she couldn't say a word. Her eyes were a little red, and her face was a little pale. Seeing this, Hu Jinyao wrapped his arms around her waist and said, Let's go. If there's anything, we can talk about it when we get home. Su Qingseng didn't object. She followed Hu Jinyao upstairs. She entered the house, turned on the lights, closed the door and sat down on the sofa. He casually picked up a pillow beside him and hugged it in his arms. Hu Jinyao glanced at her, went to the kitchen, poured her a glass of warm water, and put it in her hand. Drink some water. The warm water flowed down his throat, dispersing some of the coldness from outside. Hua Jinyao turned on the air conditioner. As the temperature rose, Su Qingseng slowly calmed down. She put the cup aside and hugged the pillow in her arms tightly. I'm sorry, Hua Jinyao. I shouldn't have done that. There was something wrong with her attitude just now. Hua Jinyao didn't speak. He just reached out and held her hand. Don't worry about that for now. Tell me what's wrong with you? What happened? This was the second time he had seen Su Qingseng like that, aside from the pregnant woman who jumped off the building. No, Su Qingseng felt even more depressed than last time. Su Qingseng pursed her lips into a straight line and stared at Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao also stared at her. She didn't speak, and neither did he. Silence. Su Qingseng lowered her head, as if she was thinking. Hua Jinyao looked at her and patiently waited for her to speak. The temperature of the air conditioner was a little high. Su Qingseng felt a little hot. She took off her coat, but didn't let go of the pillow in her arms. She tilted her head and looked at an unknown point. Hua Jinyao have Meng Meng. Meng. Mendelian inheritance. Su Qingseng's expression was calm as she finished the sentence word by word. Su Meng, Su Su, Meng Su Meng Meng. In layman's terms, it also includes blood type matching. For example, the combination of different blood types will produce a child with different blood types. Meng. Meng. Su He He Meng Ti. It is Xiang. He did not know much about medicine. What's wrong with Mendelian inheritance? Did it have anything to do with her low mood today? According to the laws of Mendelian inheritance, people with type O blood, no matter which blood type they mate with, will not be able to have a child with type AB blood. Su. Hua Jinyao couldn't figure it out. Su Qingseng finally retracted her gaze and looked at his face. My mother is type O. Do you know what my blood type is? What? Hua Jinyao guessed what Su Qingseng was going to say. I am type AB, Su Qingseng said calmly. Do you understand? I am type AB. Hua Jinyao thought about it carefully. After thinking about Su Qingseng's words, he looked at her with uncertainty and said, Maybe your father is type AB? Hua Jinyao, you didn't hear me clearly. No matter which blood type O was combined with, they would not be able to produce a child with type AB blood. Type O is a recessive hereditary blood type. Even if Su Qingseng is type O and AB, they can only give birth to type A or B. Meeting Hua Jinyao's gaze, Su Qingseng didn't mind clarifying. In other words, even if my father is type AB, if I'm the child of my father and my mother, my blood type is either A or B. But I can't be type AB. Hua Jinyao understood. He looked at Su Qingseng with a complicated expression. You mean? I'm not Xiang Saiping's daughter, Su Qingseng said calmly. My mom couldn't give birth to me. Hua Jinyao looked at her in silence. Su Qingseng didn't say anything. She didn't tell Xiang Kaiping about it. Xiang Kaiping hadn't recovered yet, so she couldn't tell her. She didn't want to upset her. Moreover, Xiang Kaiping really treated her as her daughter. If she knew that she wasn't her daughter, she wouldn't be able to bear it. She didn't dare to think about it. More than 2 months were enough for her to develop a relationship with Xiang Kaiping. She didn't want Xiang Kaiping to be sad. But if she didn't tell Xiang Kaiping, who else could she tell? If she wasn't Xiang Saiping's daughter, then whose daughter was she? Could she be Su Qinghui's daughter too? If I'm not Xiang Saiping's daughter, then who am I? Whose daughter am I? Who was she? Was she Su Qinghui's daughter? If not, why did she grow up in the Su family? If so, who was her biological mother? Did Su Qinghui have a relationship with other women? Gave birth to her? So he brought her back to the Su family to raise her? Was that so? She remembered that Su Qinghui had never liked her. Was it because Su Qinghui knew? Did he know that she wasn't Xiang Saiping's daughter? Hua Jinyao didn't say anything. The clues that he felt were wrong piled up and finally connected. He had always thought it was strange. Why was Su Qinghui so cold to her child if he couldn't forget Xiang Kaiping? Even if it was to protect Su Qingseng from being bullied by Li Qianxue and her son, it was too unreasonable. What's more, Su Qinghui could be cold to Su Qingseng in front of the Su family and treat her better in private. But Su Qinghui didn't treat Su Qingseng well even in private. Now he found the reason. Hearing Su Qingseng's words, Hua Jinyao thought of another possibility. I think it's really possible. You're really not Su Qinghui's daughter. If I'm not his daughter, then why did he raise me in the Su family? It didn't make sense at all. Didn't I say it last time? He might have done it to anger Li Qianxue. Chapter 406. After all, Xiang Kaiping had given birth to a child, and it was a girl. If she wasn't Xiang Saiping's daughter, then what about the child? Hua Jinyao raised his eyebrows and thought of a possibility. Do you think the child is gone? How could it be? Su Qingsang's eyes widened. She couldn't accept the result. I'm just guessing. According to my investigation, and what your mother said, she seemed to have a difficult birth. It took her a long time to give birth to the child. You're also a doctor. Is it possible that the child died when it was born? Your father didn't want your mother to feel bad, so he hid it. Then why did he take me back to the Su family? Isn't it better if the child is gone? I told you, it might be to anger Li Qianxue. The child of the woman he loved died, but Li Qianxue's child was still fine. With Su Qinghui's personality at that time, it was very likely that he would take a child back to anger Li Qianxue. It's possible. Su Qingsang also admitted that it seemed like something Su Qinghui would do. She finally regained some spirit on her face. So I might be an orphan? Well, Hua Jinyao didn't know how to answer. Maybe you should ask your father. Su Qinghui's blood type will know. The Su family has his medical report. It was in Su Qinghui's study. But I don't think I'm his child. So many years of cold treatment, so many years of neglect. At this time, Su Qingsang suddenly seemed to have an explanation. If she wasn't Su Qinghui and Xiang Saiping's daughter, but just a child from outside, it would all make sense. Neither of them thought that Li Qianxue was the one who had a difficult birth. After giving birth, she fainted and slept for a day and a night before waking up. Especially Su Qingsang. She would never think that someone as powerful as Li Qianxue would be deceived like this. Su Qingsang was actually still very curious about her own life. Who were her biological parents? Why did they abandon her? Did Su Qinghui just randomly pick up a child, or did he prepare it in advance? She would have to meet Su Qinghui in person to give her an explanation. Su Qingsang suddenly took out her phone and dialed Su Qinghui's number. But before she could make the call, she hung up again. She lowered her head and looked at the phone in her hand, looking a little dispirited. Even if she called, even if she asked, so what? Would Su Qinghui tell her the truth? Would he tell her about his past? Most importantly, if she really asked and Su Qinghui told her, what about Xiang Kaiping? What would happen to Xiang Kaiping? Hua Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang, who was exuding an extremely depressed aura. He didn't like seeing Su Qingsang like this. He got up, walked to Su Qingsang, and sat down next to her. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. Su Qingsang closed her eyes and leaned her face on his shoulder. Hua Jinyao, I can't ask. Hua Jinyao tightened his grip on her. Ask whatever you want. If we can't find anything, we can investigate it ourselves. After all, with Su Qinghui's identity, it's still possible to find out where he brought the child home. However, it was a little difficult. After all, more than 20 years had passed. It would take more than a little time to find Su Qingsang's biological parents. I can't ask. Su Qingsang shook her head. She had slowly calmed down. At least not now. Hua Jinyao was a smart person. He almost figured it out immediately. Are you worried about your mother? After calling her that for so long, he had gotten used to it. Su Qingsang nodded. My mother came here so happily. She brought money and a guilty heart. She wanted to recognize her daughter as her own. She was so good to me. If Xiang Kaiping knew that she wasn't her daughter, if she knew that her daughter might be gone, what would Xiang Kaiping do? Not to mention that she had just been in a car accident and hadn't fully recovered. Then don't ask. Hua Jinyao turned her shoulder and looked into her eyes. Since you don't know who your biological parents are, it's good to continue like this. Su Qingsang looked at him. Her heart trembled at his unconditional support. Hua Jinyao, don't you think I'm too useless? How could that be? You see, I used to think that I was an illegitimate daughter, but now I'm an orphan who doesn't even know who my parents are. More importantly, I don't even have the ability to find an answer for myself. Wife. Hua Jinyao lifted her body easily and held her in his arms. Don't think like that. No matter whose daughter you are, who your parents are you, orphan or illegitimate daughter. It's all because of you. You don't need to belittle yourself. I'm not belittling myself. I just feel useless. Then if you say that, am I even more useless? I can't help you find your biological parents. Hua Jinyao. Su Qingseng glanced at him and suddenly smiled. You're really good at comforting people. If that was considered comforting. I'm just telling the truth. It's not comforting. As Hua Jinyao spoke, he leaned over and kissed her cheek. This is comforting. Su Qingseng blushed a little. She blinked at Hua Jinyao. Can I scold you? Huh? You're still in the mood to think about that at a time like this? She was no longer sad. Wife, that's where you're wrong. Hua Jinyao pressed his forehead against hers and lowered his voice. There was a hint of playfulness in it. It's at times like this that we need to do something like this. It can relieve our worries. Nonsense. Su Qingseng couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. But in the next second, she leaned over and gently kissed his lips. Hua Jinyao. She put her arms around his neck and said softly, let me forget those unhappy things. Yes, madam. Hua Jinyao gently lifted her body so that she was straddling him, and tightened his arms around her waist. It was an extremely crazy night, and she was exhausted to the extreme. Su Qingseng slept soundly all night, and didn't have a single dream. When she woke up in the morning, her cheeks were red. After a night's sleep, she had adjusted her mood. Since she couldn't tell Xiang Kaiping now, she would pretend that she didn't know about it for the time being. As for the future, she would find an opportunity to ask Su Qinghui. It was his business whether he told her or not, but she couldn't continue living like this. Chapter 407. Nice. Isn't it nice? Su Qingseng looked at the sweater she was wearing. I think it's nice too. A hand-knitted sweater like this was definitely not comparable to a machine-made sweater. It was especially warm on her, and Su Qingseng didn't regret her decision. Mom will be very happy. Hua Jinyao was very happy that she had thought it through. Not to mention that blood was a big deal. Hua Jinyao felt that sometimes it wasn't as important as seeing one another. Even though Xiang Kaiping and Su Qingseng weren't mother and daughter, her motherly love for Su Qingseng came from the bottom of her heart. When Su Qingseng entered the hospital ward again, Xiang Kaiping found that she was in a good mood. She took a closer look and saw that Su Qingseng was wearing the sweater she had knitted for her. Xiang Kaiping immediately smiled and attributed her daughter's good mood to the sweater. If you like it, I'll knit it for you again after I get out of the hospital. Mom, don't knit anymore. Su Qingseng hurriedly said. If you didn't want to go out to buy wool, this wouldn't have happened. How can that be the same? I'm fine now. Don't worry. I can still do it. I won't only knit for you, but also for my grandson in the future. Looking at Xiang Saiping's smiling face, Su Qingseng once again didn't regret her choice. What did it matter whether she was Xiang Saiping's daughter or not? At least for now, she could always be Xiang Saiping's daughter. Time went by 1 week. The countdown to the Lunar New Year had entered the stage. The streets and roads began to become lively. There were more people buying things for the new year, and more people shopping on the streets. The atmosphere of the new year was very strong, but the number of patients in the hospital didn't decrease much. Su Qingseng was still busy every day, running between the department and the ward. The doctors who came for the exchange had all returned. Zhua Hongchen also came to see Xiang Kaiping. Not only Zhua Hongchen, but almost all the colleagues in the obstetrics and gynecology department came to see Xiang Kaiping. This also made Xiang Kaiping feel relieved, feeling that her daughter was very popular in the workplace. She especially liked Zhua Hongchen, and thought that he was a good young man. Once when Shi Mengwan came, he said that he would introduce her to Shi Mengwan, but Shi Mengwan was scared away. Su Qingseng specially told Xiang Kaiping that she could talk to Shi Mengwan about anything. It didn't matter what anyone said. There was only one thing, and that was to never talk to her about a boyfriend. She didn't elaborate on what it was, but Xiang Kaiping wouldn't ask again next time. In short, everything was going in a good direction. The cured meat and sausages that Xiang Kaiping had made for Su Qingsang were ready to eat. Unfortunately, Xiang Kaiping couldn't eat it now. However, she didn't mind at all. She repeatedly told Su Qingsang to ask Sister Lu to cook for the couple. After nearly half a month of recovery, Xiang Kaiping could already eat some light staple foods. Of course, it was still inconvenient for her to move around. When she went to the toilet, she had to rely on the nurse for daily life. However, she had Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao to take care of her, and Shi Mingwan came to accompany her from time to time. Xiang Kaiping felt refreshed. At the same time, Su Qinghui, who had sent Su Peijian to the United States, returned. The first thing Su Qinghui did when he came back was to visit Kaiping. Unfortunately, Su Qingsang was at work that day and was not in the ward. Xiaoning went to fetch some water and walked away for a while. There was no one else in the ward. Su Qinghui entered the ward just like that. Xiang Kaiping had already woken up. She was used to taking afternoon naps after eating, but she never slept long. Her waist was injured and she couldn't move around freely. She had to wait for about 10 more days for her rehabilitation. It had been a bit hard for her these days, but she didn't mention it to her daughter and son-in-law. Xiaoning, please get me a glass of water. She only heard someone enter the ward, but she didn't look to see who it was. At this time, Su Qingsang was at work, and Shi Mingwan wasn't free either. Only Xiaoning was there. There was a glass in front of her, filled with water. Xiang Kaiping, who was half-sitting, was about to reach out to take it. However, she clearly saw that the hand was not Xiaoning's with some meat. The moment she looked up and saw Su Qinghui, Xiang Kaiping's expression changed. What are you doing here? I'm here to see you. Su Qinghui felt very guilty towards Xiang Kaiping. He held the glass of water, and the expression on his face was a little restrained. Thank you. I don't need you to see me. Xiang Kaiping was angry when she saw him. Naturally, she didn't have a good expression on her face. I'll recover faster if you don't come to see me. If you come to see me, I'm afraid my life will be shortened. Her words were really rude. Su Qinghui looked a little angry. Kaiping, why do you have to be like this? You and I are two different people, not us. Xiang Kaiping made a clear distinction. Also, you are not welcome here. Please leave. Su Qinghui handed the glass a little closer, but found that Xiang Kaiping didn't take it at all. He put the glass aside helplessly. Kaiping, I've sent Peijian to the United States. That's your business. You don't have to tell me. I told her that she can't come back this new year. She has to stay there alone until the new year. Do you think this is a punishment? Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qinghui, even though she knew that Su Qinghui would send Peijian away. She was also the one who said not to hold Peijian responsible. However, when she heard him say that, she was still disgusted. Peijian has never spent the new year alone. Su Qinghui looked at Xiang Kaiping. He had an inexplicable urge to let Xiang Kaiping know more. Heh! Xiang Kaiping sneered. She felt a throbbing pain in her heart. Su Qinghui, Peijian has never spent the new year alone. Do you know your daughter Su Qingsang? Qingsang was even on duty in the hospital during the new year. Do you still feel that Peijian has been wronged? That's not what I meant. Su Qinghui looked a little embarrassed. He really didn't care where Su Qingsang spent the new year. He vaguely remembered that she was not with the Su family for 2 years. Even if Qingsang was with the Su family, do you really think of her as your daughter? Have you ever felt any warmth for her during the new year? Have you? Kaiping, calm down. I am calm. Xiang Kaiping was really calm. If I'm not calm, what I'm going to do now is to kill you and die with you. Xiang Kaiping was a little upset. She patted her chest and said, You should go. I don't want to see you. Kaiping, listen to me. Listen to me. I haven't finished what I told you the last time. Kaiping, Qingsang really isn't. Really not your daughter. Chapter 408. She lowered her head to look at her phone, then calmly put it back into her pocket. She just stood at the door and stared at Su Qinghui. Her gaze was a little strange. Su Qinghui frowned and couldn't help but take another look at Su Qingsang. He suspected that she had guessed what he had just said, but he also felt that he might be thinking too much. Su Qingsang couldn't possibly know. He wasn't quite sure, so there was a hint of hesitation on his face. On the other side, Xiang Kaiping already didn't want to see him. Qingsang, you came at the right time. Let Mr. Su go. Su Qingsang looked at Su Qinghui. Unlike Xiang Kaiping's stubbornness and indifference, she had already heard the second half of what Su Qinghui wanted to say. Su Qinghui met Su Qingsang's gaze, and inexplicably felt a little guilty, but only for a moment. He turned around and looked at Xiang Kaiping. Since you're in a bad mood today, I'll come to see you next time. No need. I'm in a good mood if you don't come to see me. I'm afraid my mood will really be bad if you come to see me. Su Qinghui felt a little uncomfortable being humiliated by Xiang Kaiping in front of Su Qingsang. However, compared to feeling uncomfortable, he really didn't want Xiang Kaiping and Su Qingsang to be so intimate. Especially after the incident with Su Peijian, he now regretted and hesitated. He couldn't continue the thought that he wanted to blurt out when facing Su Qingsang. His face slightly darkened, he turned around and walked out. Su Qingsang looked at him. When he passed by her, she said softly, "Dad, I'll walk you out." Su Qinghui glanced at Su Qingsang. He seemed to be a little surprised by her actions, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He turned around and looked at Xiang Kaiping with a look of hesitation. Seeing this scene, Su Qingsang's mood was actually extremely calm. She thought that after a week of settling down, she had already accepted the worst outcome. No matter how bad that outcome was, Su Qinghui had something on his mind, so his footsteps were a little hurried. When he was about to go to the elevator, Su Qingsang blocked in front of him. "Dad." This "dad" had a deeper meaning. "If you're not in a hurry to leave, why don't you come to my office and sit for a while?" Su Qinghui frowned. He didn't understand what Su Qingsang wanted to do. She smiled gently. "There are some things that I don't mind saying here, but I think you might prefer to say it in a place with no one around." What does that mean? Hua Jinyao had threatened her because of Su Peijian. Was Su Qingsang thinking the same thing now? Su Qingsang followed Su Qinghui to her office. There was still no one. Su Qingsang gently closed the office door, walked to Su Qinghui, and stood in front of him. Su Qinghui didn't understand what she wanted to do. He stared at her face warily. "What do you mean? What are you trying to say, Dad?" Su Qingsang's voice was very soft. In fact, she didn't even know if she was calling him Dad. "What is it? When you were in the ward just now, you actually wanted to tell my mother that I'm not her daughter, right?" Su Qinghui widened his eyes and looked at Su Qingsang as if she was a monster. What nonsense are you talking about?" "Nonsense?" Su Qingsang was expressionless. Su Qinghui's expression had confirmed her guess. No, it wasn't a guess but a fact. She wasn't Xiang Kaiping's daughter. And she probably wasn't Su Qinghui's daughter either. "You know very well whether I'm talking nonsense or not, don't you?" Su Qingsang. Su Qinghui's expression was ugly. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about." He turned to leave, and Su Qingsang didn't stop him. "Don't know what I'm talking about? My mother's blood type is O. I may be. You may not know, or you know, but you pretend not to know. People with blood type O can't give birth to children with blood type AB. No matter what blood type O is combined with, they can't give birth to children with blood type A." As Su Qingsang spoke, she looked at Su Qinghui, who was standing there motionlessly, and walked toward him step by step. "My mother's blood type O, and I may be. How can I be my mother's child?" In the time it took to say a few words, Su Qingsang had already stood in front of Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui was very tall. He was much taller than Su Qingsang, so she had to look up to him. She raised her head and looked at the man she had called father for 25 years. "If I'm right, Dad, you're not type AB, are you?" Su Qinghui's expression became more and more ugly. Of course he wasn't type AB. He was type B. Su Peijian was also type B. When Su Peijian gave birth to the child, he actually thought about it, afraid that it would be exposed. That way, he wouldn't be able to carry out his revenge. However, later, when he gave Su Peijian a physical examination, he found out that Su Peijian was actually type B. He was also type B. That was normal. After all, Li Qinshua's blood type was AB. It would be really strange if a person with blood type AB and a person with blood type B gave birth to a child with blood type O. If that was the case, Old Master Li and Li Qianxue would definitely know. Because Su Peijian was type B, so was he. So after so many years, Li Qianxue had never suspected it. She had never suspected that her child was actually not her. And that was the reason why Su Qinghui doted on Su Peijian so much. His 3 children, Su Qingsang and Su Yusin, were both type AB. They had inherited Li Qianxue's blood type. Only Su Peijian was type B, exactly the same as his blood type. Countless times he had thought, see, this was the will of God. Even God approved of his revenge. Otherwise, why would Su Peijian be type B? In a short period of time, Su Qinghui's expression changed a few times from gray to white. He looked at his daughter in front of him, who was nearly a head shorter than him. No matter how strong his mentality was, he couldn't react for a moment when the deepest secret in his heart was suddenly exposed. Su Qingsang looked at Su Qinghui's expression and already had an answer in her heart. Dad, I'm not Xiang Saiping's daughter. Then am I your daughter? Su Qinghui's expression was ugly. He didn't answer Su Qingsang's question. He just stood there without moving. I don't think I'm your daughter either, right? When Su Qingsang said this, she kept staring at Su Qinghui's face. He seemed to suddenly come to a realization. I'll say it again. What nonsense are you talking about? There's nothing like that. Nonsense. Su Qingsang nodded and narrowed her eyes. If I were your daughter, if I were Xiang Saiping's daughter, then, did you really love Xiang Kaiping? Su Qinghui's face was livid and he didn't speak. He didn't want to say it, so Su Qingsang spoke for him. If you loved her, how could you have the heart to treat the child of a woman you truly loved like this? So you don't love my mother at all, right? Chapter 409. As soon as he opened his mouth, it would be easy for him to make a mistake and give Su Qingsang something to use against him. He had already made a mistake once. He couldn't make another one. Su Qinghui remained silent. It was impossible for him to remain silent. Faced with Su Qingsang's aggressive attitude, he suddenly felt a little annoyed. I'll say it again. I don't know what you're talking about. If you're not Xiang Saiping's daughter, then who are you? Maybe Su Qingsang was just lying to him. If she wasn't Xiang Saiping's daughter, how could she be so close to Xiang Kaiping after only a few months? It was clear that they had never lived together, and it wasn't like they grew up together. If she was sure, she would have left Xiang Kaiping alone. Su Qingsang stared at his face. She wasn't surprised by his stubbornness and concealment. Su Qingsang sighed softly, but she had to say what she wanted to say next. Don't you find it strange? I know I'm not my mother's daughter, but I didn't tell her. Su Qinghui didn't say anything. He really didn't know his daughter well. Because even if my mother and I are not related by blood, I still see her as my mother in my heart. As Su Qingsang spoke, she lowered her head and glanced at herself. She was wearing the sweater that Xiang Kaiping knitted, and the necklace that Xiang Kaiping gave her. The cured meat and sausages that Xiang Kaiping bought for her were still hanging on the balcony of her house. She could still hear Xiang Saiping's gentle words and instructions every morning. These were the motherly love that she had never received since she was a child. She couldn't bear to. Even though she knew Xiang Kaiping wasn't her mother, she couldn't bear to. She couldn't bear to hurt Xiang Saiping's heart. She had been so good to her. What if Xiang Kaiping found out that the daughter she had been taking care of with all her heart wasn't her daughter? Su Qingsang didn't dare to think about it. She didn't even dare to gamble. She didn't want to hurt an innocent woman's heart. Dad, can you tell me who I am? Who is my mother? Who is my father? Who gave birth to me? Who brought me into this world? Su Qingsang. Su Qinghui looked at his daughter and felt helpless for the first time. I'll say it again. Everything you said just now is nonsense. Su Qingsang looked at Su Qinghui coldly. She wasn't stupid. Su Qinghui's attitude was very problematic. Her brain worked very fast. Many details and possibilities flew through her mind one by one. The fact that I'm not Xiang Saiping's daughter is already set in stone. This is something you can't deny. If you really want proof, I can do a paternity test with my mother. Su Qingsang looked into Su Qinghui's eyes and said slowly, A paternity test can't be faked. Whether I'm Xiang Saiping's daughter or not, we'll know once we do the test. Su Qinghui's expression finally changed a little, but it was only for a moment. He quickly regained his composure. Su Qingsang had been staring at his face, trying not to miss any expression on his face. I really want to know now. If I'm not Xiang Saiping's daughter, am I your daughter? Really? Su Qinghui seemed to have finally regained his confidence. Su Qingsang, I said don't talk nonsense. If you're not my daughter, whose daughter are you? Did she think he had the leisure to help raise someone else's daughter? As soon as he said that, Su Qinghui immediately realized that he had said something wrong. Sure enough, he saw the corners of Su Qingsang's mouth rise slightly with some understanding. She seemed to have finally found out Su Qinghui's secret. I'm your daughter? Su Qingsang looked into Su Qinghui's eyes. Really? Are you sure? Su Qingsang, what kind of attitude is that? Su Qingsang didn't ask any more. Su Qinghui's angry face made her believe what he said. Which man would like to help raise someone else's child? That meant that she must be Su Qinghui's daughter. She nodded and looked at Su Qinghui, her eyes clear. I'm your daughter. But I'm not Xiang Saiping's daughter? In other words, when my mom and auntie didn't know about it, there was a fourth party somewhere else? Su Qingsang, have you said enough? Su Qinghui couldn't listen anymore. Who did Su Qingsang think he was? What fourth party? That was really unpleasant to hear. You betrayed my mother and auntie. You really don't love my mother. In fact, Su Qingsang could easily guess that Su Qinghui didn't love Xiang Kaiping. If he really loved her, they would have been together back then. Don't say that the Li family forced him or anything. She had lived with old Master Li and Li Qinxue for a long time. To put it bluntly, if Su Qinghui didn't agree, could the Li family force him to go to the hall? Su Qingsang. Su Qinghui didn't know what else to say. He could only call Su Qingsang's name again. Shut up. What would a child like her know about adult affairs? Su Qingsang smiled, and that smile was meaningful. Does auntie know? She had always thought that Su Qinghui was a bit of a scumbag, but now it seemed that Su Qinghui was really not an ordinary scumbag. On the one hand, he was having sex with Li Qinxue, on the other hand, he was constantly in contact with Xiang Kaiping. And on the other hand, there was another woman who came out of nowhere. It was the first time she knew that Su Qinghui could be so capable. Su Qingsang, shut up. Su Qinghui's expression was ugly. He took a step forward and almost lost his temper. Have you said enough? No. Su Qingsang was distracted, but she didn't intend to retreat at all. I haven't said enough. I have the right to know who my biological mother is, right? Su Qinghui was stunned for a moment. He suddenly turned his face away. That's not something you should worry about. Not something I should worry about. Su Qingsang wanted to laugh. Then what should I worry about? Dad, although you don't like me, I have called you Dad for more than 20 years. All I want now is a true would-I an answer. Can't you give it to me? There is no answer. You are thinking too much. If there is no answer, can I think that I am not your daughter? Su Qingsang, what kind of attitude is that? I told you, what you just said is nonsense. If you are not my daughter, whose daughter are you? Okay, you said that I am your daughter. Then let me ask you, where is my mother? Where is my mother? Who is my mother? Chapter 410. No one. Su Qingsang had never thought that her relationship with Su Qinghui would become like this one day. But I just want to know the answer. Is it difficult? Or is it difficult to tell the identity of the person who gave birth to me? You. Isn't it? If it wasn't for the fact that the person who gave birth to me had such a difficult identity for you to speak of, why would you still be so secretive at this point? Su Qinghui's face was red. He didn't answer Su Qingsang's question. Su Qingsang didn't expect him to give her an answer so easily, but she still had doubts in her heart. She didn't understand, and she wanted to know the answer. She couldn't help but take a step forward and look up at Su Qinghui. Dad, am I the product of a one-night stand? You. Su Qinghui was angry. He raised his hand and almost slapped Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang just raised her head and stared at him. Adi Rui's hand paused in the air for a few seconds, and finally retracted it. Humph. Su Qinghui snorted and left without looking back. This time, Su Qingseng didn't stop him. She stood there and stared blankly at the door that Su Qinghui had slammed shut. She was a little tired and weak. She took a step back and leaned against the desk. She had solved half of her doubts, but there was still the other half. Su Qinghui was her father. That should be true. What about her mother? What kind of life gave birth to her? Which woman did Su Qinghui have a close relationship with before? She couldn't figure it out. If he didn't say, no one would know. Who should she ask? If Su Qinghui didn't tell her the answer, who else could she ask? Her phone suddenly rang. She looked at Hua Jinyao's name and picked it up. Hua Jinyao returned to Rong City 2 days ago. It was almost the end of the year. Even as the president of Tianyu Group, he couldn't be too capricious. There were a lot of things to deal with in Rong City. Su Qingseng knew that he was very busy. Several times at night, she could still hear him typing on the keyboard. From time to time, she could hear Yang Wenchang reporting to him. Why are you calling me at this time? Su Qingseng looked at the time. Have you had lunch? Yes, I have. Hua Jinyao handed a document to Yang Wenchang and signaled him to leave with his eyes. Didn't you take a nap? Nope. Something came up, and I couldn't sleep. Su Qingseng's mood was affected by Su Qinghui's reaction. What's wrong? Hua Jinyao immediately sensed that something was wrong in her voice. What happened? Hua Jinyao. Su Qingseng cleared her throat. I'm not an orphan. You asked your dad. Yes. He just came to see my mother. Su Qingseng repeated what Su Qinghui had said to Su Qingseng. Of course, she didn't mention that Su Qinghui was so angry that he almost wanted to hit her. You're saying that your father admitted that you're his daughter, but he didn't tell you who your mother was? Yes. And no matter how I asked, he wouldn't tell me. Su Qingseng was a little upset. Is my birth mother someone with a bad background? Otherwise, why would Su Qinghui act like this? Not necessarily. Hua Jinyao thought a little more than Su Qingseng. Is it possible that your birth mother's identity is not only not bad, but also shocking? What do you mean? Think about it. Your father was able to win Li Qianshua's favor, and he insisted on marrying her. It's hard to say that there aren't any rich ladies in Lin City who also liked your father. But they couldn't compete with Li Qianxue, so they simply gave up. Hua Jinyao said it casually, and Su Qingseng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Come on. You may not know what the Li family was like back then. Who was brave enough to compete with Li Qianxue for a man? Did they want to die? What else could they do? They can't explain it. If you were born to a woman outside, he could just tell Li Qianxue who gave birth to you and whose daughter you are. Anyway, you don't need to be afraid of the itch when there are so many lice. It's the same to find a woman outside, and it's also the same to find 2 women outside. Hua Jinyao. That's enough. Su Qingseng couldn't listen to it anymore. Although I think my father is quite a scumbag, why do I feel that your guess is even more unreliable than mine? How is it unreliable? Hua Jinyao thought it was completely possible. If you ask me, you might be the daughter of a rich family. But because you can't go against the Li family, your father is very secretive and refuses to say it directly. Hua Jinyao looked at the screen in front of him and said it casually. However, the idea of not going against the Li family flashed through his mind. A very absurd thought flashed through his mind. In fact, was it possible? Su Qingseng bit her lip and didn't answer Hua Jinyao's words. All right, you haven't told me why you called me at this time. After Hua Jinyao went to Rong City, he would call her every night. But this was the first time he called at this time. Thinking of this, Hua Jinyao's thoughts stopped thinking about Su Qinghui. There is something. Hua Jinyao's voice was very soft. Grandpa wants you to come to Rong City for the new year. I have already refused. But he said that he can send someone to pick you and Mom up in a private plane. He also said that if you are worried, he will hire the best medical staff. Why so suddenly? Is it because you have to go to Rong City for some reason? Hua Jinyao paused for a moment and thought of something. I may have forgotten to tell you. My grandpa has a brother and a sister. I also have a great-uncle and a great-aunt. They usually don't live in Rong City. Every year during the new year, My great-uncle and great-aunt will come over. My great-aunt and great-uncle know that I am married. They want to see you. If it were anyone else, Hua Jingyao naturally wouldn't care. But his great-uncle, Hua Yangyuan, and great-aunt, Hua Yangxiu, were not ordinary people. They were 2 generations older than him. It was normal for them to want to see the eldest granddaughter-in-law of the Hua family. This request was completely reasonable. Not to mention that this was the first year of Su Qingsang's marriage. Qingsang, my grandpa said that he will arrange the best hospital. Please rest assured. He will make sure that our mother receives the best care. Did this mean that she had to go to Rong City with him? Hua Jingyao, do you have a lot of people in your family? Are you afraid? I am not afraid. I just feel that it is a little troublesome. She had already met Hua Jingyao's uncle and aunt, as well as his group of cousins last time. At that time, she thought that was all. But she didn't expect that there would be another great-uncle, and then another great-aunt. In addition to the children of these great-uncles and great-aunt, how many relatives would there be? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.